to experiment a little bit? Is it to rest and recover the athletes as much as possible? Or potentially, maybe you were trying to make someone shine that typically you wouldn't give them a chance to do so. But since strategically this match didn't have a lot of influence, you maybe gave someone a shot that you typically wouldn't have. Um, Dylan, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, match nine. It was an interesting match. I think James fell into the same boat here, where it was our first or our third match in 9 days, I think. So the team was pretty beat up at this point. It's it's part of the kind of grueling aspect of the schedule there. There are a lot of tired swimmers, as we'll get into. Still some great swims all over the place, but from our perspective, to your point, we already knew that we were in the semifinals, which was a big goal of the season. So Byron McDonald, the head coach of Toronto, and I really wanted to have a look at where could we give rest to people that maybe needed some rest. That wasn't everybody. Some people could still had to sort of shoulder their usual burden. Some people we were able to give a bit of rest to. We rested Emily Overholt, for example, to get her back in top shape for the semis, and as a result, we're able to have Candice Hall get her first ISL swim, which was great. But yeah, so it was sort of plug and play on who we felt was maybe a bit more tired, needed a bit more rest, who could I think Tess Chaplua gets the award of the only person on the team to actually add more events in the third event, or this third grueling match here for us. So she was able to bump up to the 400 free again to allow us to rest Emily Overholt. So it was definitely a strategic match. It was a tough one because of how tired everyone was, but it took I think a little bit extra strategy to figure out who needed to swim where.
Yeah, makes sense. Maybe it was a little more challenging for the coaches in a way. But Dylan, can you sort of shed the light on a little bit on what was your team's goals before the start of the season? Because you guys are a rookie team. Was sort of the number one goal was making it to the semis, maybe, or was it making it to the finals? Did you have anything like this in mind?
Sure. Yeah. So definitely making it to the semifinals. I think as an expansion team, it's the cards are automatically stacked against you a little bit. All the big superstars of the league are already on teams, so we had to be gritty with recruiting. We felt like we had a good team, but definitely we wanted to make semifinals as the goal. And I think in a league where there's 8 semifinal spots in 10 teams, there are a few teams that are pretty confident that they're going to be into the semifinals regardless, and as a result, maybe they don't have to rest everybody throughout all the regular season matches. In our case, we were with a handful of teams that were sort of on the cusp, so we didn't want to take any chances and maybe not taper somebody or not rest somebody for the early matches, have them train through, and then have that cost you in the end. So I think on the bright side, we were able to get through to the semis. Everyone performed really well, did what they had to do in the first couple matches, and as a result, this fourth match wasn't as important as some of the earlier ones. But on the other hand, because we had to go full tilt for the first few matches there, and we weren't really given a break, so I think we were experiencing a bit more fatigue than maybe some other teams that were able to either have a bit of a more balanced schedule, or just we're pretty confident that we're going to move on, so we're able to kind of rest people selectively.
Thank you, Dylan. And kind of since your initial goal was making it to the semis, did you kind of make a deep breath in and a deep breath out after you knew after probably match three that you're comfortably making it, or
Yeah,
was
it
it sort of
was.
game on? I don't know. You
Yeah,
were excited about it.
Byron had a talk with the team, because it was it was important, that it was great that we accomplished our goals and we're on to the semis, and it definitely takes a load off your shoulders not to have it matter as much going into the last match. But on the other hand, we didn't want to swim slow in the last match either. That wasn't it can be sometimes when the weight is off your shoulders, that can allow you to take your foot off the gas a bit. And we didn't want people to swim poorly just because they knew that it wasn't as important. So it was, you know, the team I think was good at remaining focused. Some people, like I said, were just plain fatigued, but you know, remaining focused, still taking it seriously, even though that the implications weren't as important for the last match.
Definitely.
Thank you, Nolan.
For example, we already discussed with you, Dylan, like the perspective that you gave, basically from the Toronto Titans side. But James, talking about Energy Standard, a team who, in my opinion, and almost everybody knows that it's full of superstars. You know, was your main focus, your main approach to try new lineups in order to rest people, or what was the main goal here in this match, especially knowing that you were already in the semifinals?
James, you gave Sergei Shevtsov a shot in the sort of main team. He wasn't a relay alternate this time.
Yeah, no, it's a unique challenge, you know. Like momentum is very important in a team-based competitions. So my thing was not to make too many changes, but to keep the momentum of the team going, because we had a bit of a rusty start to the ISL. And what I wanted to try and do is make sure that, you know, we were starting to swim into the meets. We were getting better and better, but I wanted to win the meet. I didn't want to make too many sacrifices or play around too much with the lineups to mean that we drop points. I think, you know, in the whole of the ISL for 2019 and 2020, we only dropped one point really in the regular season. So I wanted to make sure that we won the meet and also respected our opposition and our competition. But I did give Florent Manodou a rest. He stepped out of the team completely for the meet because he was pretty beaten up. Dylan spoke earlier about the schedule. We had a brutal schedule. We had like I think it was in 8 days. In 8 days, we had 3 matches. And all of our guys were pretty tired. And what we've sort of seen is the freestyle skins, especially for the men, that really kills them, especially the sprint-based athletes. So Florent needed a rest. I made some changes around. I brought in Andre Gilkin, who was recovering from coronavirus, and he actually really surprised himself. Obviously, we were professional. We followed all the medical protocols, returned to training protocols. We had all the doctors sign off because we have obviously our first priority is to look after the athletes. But Andre was declared fit and healthy, and he really wanted to race, and he surprised himself from being in his bedroom for 2 weeks. So no, for me going in, it was I took the match very seriously. I wasn't going to just drop points for no reason. And I think, like I said, team sport, it's very important that you take that momentum into the next match to keep winning. Winning is a dirty habit, and once you keep doing it, you want more of it.
100%, James. And yeah, we'll get into it later in this discussion. But Andre Gilkin was a total surprise after spending 2 weeks in quarantine, performing up to the level he was. He was damn near his personal bests, to be honest with you. And that is very impressive. But with this being said, James, you correctly mentioned that Florent Manodou wasn't part of this match. So this is pretty much my only chance to ask you this question. We've already spoken to John, to Delano, to Tom from Energy Standard regarding this, but I haven't asked this to you yet. James, how, in your opinion, has the handball career affected Florent Manodou? Because the other coaches at Energy Standard say that he's added a little bit more muscle. Potentially, he's become more powerful, but this has strongly affected his endurance, and it's harder for him to recover between races, especially. Would you agree to this?
Not 100%, no. He's already swum long course 100 freestyle. Luxembourg last year was at 48.5 in the heats. He's proved through the skins that he can do things quite well. I think it's just how you manage that physicality. Like he's shrunk. He went up to around 110 kilos in muscle mass. If anyone knows, that's enormous for a swimmer. But he handled that quite well. But what I think what you find is that was just more the effects of the year, the lockdown, the lack of training, the lack of sort of aerobic conditioning that really affected a lot of the swimmers. I know Vlad Morozov was pretty much the same. Struggled a little bit initially, but then
James,
life.
we actually had a chat with Vlad, and Vlad had a bit of a, sorry for interrupting, had a little bit of a different story. He actually decided himself to take some time off. He thought it was the best time to do so. So he only had like a month and a half before ISL that he actually swam.
Oh, so he still had 6 weeks preparation, so he had more than my guys. So it was all different for everyone, and I know a lot of them had a big extended break, and some didn't. You know, some athletes didn't take any time out of the water. I know Caleb and Ryan Murphy, when they did their interview before the ISL started, they spoke of how they didn't really stop, because in their, you know, as they were going through, and every country had different restrictions, and you know, it was a different challenge for everyone. And Flo, you know, he had an enforced period off, but still he was only 2/10 off the world record. You know, before Caleb smashed it in the final. In one of the races, he was 22.5, 22.4. So, you know, he was bang on around his best times. So his form wasn't too bad.
Thank you, James. And in no way am I saying that Flo is in any way worse than he used to be, as to say. What I'm saying is he having more difficulty recovering in between the events than he used to after this handball career? Or was it just purely because of the lack of training because of COVID?
Lack of training, and he's a sprint guy, you know, like it was a good job. It was a good job Benny Proud wasn't a big multi-eventer, because he doesn't enjoy that too much.
Yeah.
I wish we had a Tokyo Frog Kings representative. Maybe they'd have something to say about Bruno Fratis. Struggling on that one free. But thank you, James. Saskia, what about you? How was this match in the minds of Team Iron? And I believe this was quite a cool match for you at a certain sense, because you guys had Robert Glinta swimming finally for you, and Katinka seemed to be relatively on top of her game, and things seem to be falling your way in this match quite a bit. What was in the mind of Team Iron before this match?
We are sitting before the matches with this swimmers, so Glinta and Katinka, also Ranomi, and we talk about the strategy about this match. I think for the next time, maybe we can change more to keep some swimmers rest. And I think this match, so in the semi-final, there are 2 swimmers from the breaststroke girls. I think when they didn't swim this match, I think they are better in the semi-final. I think that's the difference that we can change for them maybe the next time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was difficult to put somebody else in this how do you say, to put them in the other distance.
Makes sense. Yeah, experiment a little bit. Yeah.
And Saskia, you being a former swimmer, I mean, what do you think it was going through the minds of the swimmers, especially after Dylan and James mentioned that they were very tired and the schedule was a little bit overwhelming? What did you think was going through their minds?
I think some swimmers are, how do you say, they didn't know how to swim this match. The match before, it was they are swimming good, and the times are perfect. And some, so Melanie, she didn't know how to swim the 50 fly. So I was thinking, focus only on the turn or underwater, and that's also the focus points in training. And I think when they are focused on that point, they know what to do at the match. But it was for us as team difficult to put somebody else on the other distance. So we didn't know how to change the swimmers.
Thank you. And with that, let's dive into the match itself and straight into our first event, the male 200 backstroke. And Saskia, straight away a question to you. I mean, Robert Glinte is now on the team, and Robert Glinte is more of a sprint guy in my perspective. But here he drops a 150 over 187, and I believe that's quite a strong statement from Robert, and it's I believe a good sign right then of amazing things for him to come in the future of this match and the semifinal also. But what was your impression of Robert in this match?
He was grow up after every match. He after 2 weeks also in quarantine is his room, so he every match he know what to do and how to grow up to also 200 backstroke, and yeah, I think he know what to do and with the match before how to swim, what is level, and it was a good performance.
The rest of your athletes sort of had the warming up matches, as to say, that they got to roll into things. Robert didn't ever have this. How do you think he managed sort of getting right into it without maybe starting off slow with some of the times? But he didn't really. He went right into it, and so much time without competition for him also, right? And it seemed to not affect him. Yeah, it's
No, he knows what to do, and also after 1 week of training, it feels good, and you saw also how he's swimming, and every training was better and better. So he grows up in the training and also in the matches.
Okay, thank you, Saskia. And James, for you, I mean, obviously a great event for you. 1-2, Kolesnikov 149.26 and Rilov 148.62. But James, tell me, this match sort of was the resurrection of Clement in a way. He seemed to be off of his game for the entirety of the bubble until this point. And this event in particular, 149.26, then he drops a 45 in a relay later on, and he's on top of his game. What changed for him?
Yeah, this was a huge breakout meet for Klim. Like he came in pretty fatigued. You know, he came into the bubble pretty tired. I spoke with Dmitry Lazarev, his coach, and I said, you know, our priority is the final. So, and we, you know, that was always the plan. He had, you know, we had the first meet, then we had essentially 2 weeks off, and then we had a real intense competition period afterwards. So Klim was just pretty beaten up, and he was saving his best till last, really. And which you see as you went through, you know, he got better and better. It was almost the perfect scenario. But that's not to take anything away from Evgeny Rilov, who won the event, and he was so consistent throughout the whole ISL. And you know, yeah, I think he only lost one of the 200 backstrokes, and you know, he was just incredible through the whole time. But what was impressive about with Clement was in that 200 backstroke race was he came over the top of Rizuki Iri in the last 50. So Evgeny was a little bit in front with 50 to go, and you know, Klim was behind. He was in third place, and you don't generally see that from a 50-meter backstroke world record holder come over the top of a experienced veteran in the last 50, and he had an awesome last 50 of the race. I think it was around 27.5 seconds. It was the fastest in the field by miles, and that was very impressive. But no, for our energy standard, 1-2 in the 2 back and 2 very solid times was excellent. Especially, you know, getting that's why I talked about momentum. It's very important to keep winning. And I think once you start giving away easy wins, like we could have easily given the win to Tokyo in there, but once you start giving away wins, it shifts. It's a mental shift. So it's very important just to keep winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, James. And you mentioned this final sprint that Klim has that is uncharacteristic of a 50 backstroker specialist. But James, this was not the only event Klim did this. He was doing it at every event starting from match 9, I believe. Just have a look at his world record swim at the 100 backstroke. His last 25 was insane. Was that a strategical element that you guys were working on with him? or how did this came to life?
This is the way he paces himself. That's his race strategy. You can just tell by his splits and the way he does things. He finishes the hundreds very, very strong. What he does, he clearly has a lot of speed. You know, being the 50 world record holder long course and the 100 world record holder short course. You know, he's got a lot of easy speed. So Klim can actually go out very fast, but for him it feels easy. You know, for another athlete would have to work very close to their maximum speed, would be producing a lot more lactic acid than someone else just to keep up with him at 50. So Klim can just relax, and he tends to. You know, sometimes you think he's getting it, he's pushing it to the limit, being a bit too far behind at halfway. But you know, he's got an awesome underwater kick, short course meters, and you know, coming off the last walls. You know, he can deliver strong finishes, but he has exceptional conditioning. And I talked to you about that was the process going in. What it was him and Dimitri. They had their plan. Like, you know, the first meets weren't going to be pretty. Klim is the sort of guy as well. He needs to take rest and he needs to shave, and that's when you see his best form. But then when it came out, it was like the first day, 200 back, 100 freestyle in the relay, 100 backstroke on and it was all, you know, he finished world-class swims. In fact, his 100 backstroke world record when he set it was his third race of the day. And it wasn't as if the two races before he was taking it easy. So, you know, he's just generally he's an exceptionally conditioned athlete, and that's a credit to the coach and the athlete for that process.
Thank you, James. And as someone who used to swim with Klim a little bit, I noticed this weird ability Klim has. He can swim very fast and maintain his speed with a very high lactic acid. Would you agree with me about this? A lot longer than your typical athlete that would be at the same lactic level. Would you agree to this thing that exists about Klim? And if so, why do you think this happens?
Well, we've tested him. You know, like we've done scientific tests on him, and he actually is not as high producer. He does produce lactic acid. Obviously, he produces power, but he's not an incredibly high producer. But he can maintain his speed with high levels of lactate, and that just comes from the training process. You know, like he is incredibly aerobic conditioned. I've seen how he works. I've seen how he does things. And there's, you know, like it's the same with a lot of the best swimmers in the world. They can all, like Adam Peaty, Clement, Caleb Dressel, they can all tolerate high levels of lactic acid and hold their speed together very, very well. He's just an exceptional athlete.
Thank you, James.
And Dylan, I wanted to ask you about the backstrokers now that we are talking about that 200 backstroke for the men's. Toronto Titans has a very strong field on the women's side of the backstrokers. But on the other hand, on the men's side, it's a very young field. And you being an interim general manager, what is going to be your approach to the draft and to the selection of the swimmers, talking about the backstroke for the next season? Were you happy with Jay Elliott and Cole Pratt? I know that they are very young swimmers, and at the end, in the semifinals, especially Cole improved a lot, almost breaking that world junior record. But what was your thoughts during the season and looking into it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges of being an expansion team is the lack of superstars, right? We have a few certainly, and as you point out, on the women's side, we were very strong in backstroke. Lisa Bratton, the event before, won the 200 back at this match. Kylie was always up there, but yeah, on the men's side, we lacked, especially in the 200, like the 100 and the 50. We had Shane Ryan, who was extremely solid, but the 200, you know, didn't have a true superstar there. So our strategy, Jay Elliott really was kind of, we have a few people on the team that I would put into this category of just kind of a workhorse, where they were never meant to win events, but they were meant to plug a lot of holes, swim fast, be able to be, you know, Jay swam a ton of different events for us over the course of the season, and that allowed other people to have lighter workloads. And none of that's a slight to Jay's actual speed. You know, even this event, after having a pretty heavy workload the whole season, he's a little bit off his best time. Semifinals, he gets a bit more rest, and I believe he went a best time by a little bit there as well. Cole, you know, slightly different story. I think he's he's still on a very upward trajectory. He just turned 18. He was our youngest swimmer on the team, just turned 18 a little bit before the competition. If you can see him in person, he's somebody that could afford to fill out as he gets older. And he went 152 here. He had some pretty big drops in the semis where he went 150 in the 2 back, and then dropped over a second on his best time in the 100 back. So next year, Cole is going to be he's middle of the pack now at 18, and I think he's got only room to go up. So he's going to be a threat next year in any of the backstrokes. And finding another person, that's where the strategy comes in. Do you go in the draft for 2 superstars in the 200 back? We're already pretty solid in the sprint backstrokes, even on the men's side, and Cole better in the 200. You might be better off. I think we probably see as we review some other events, but there are some sprint events that I think are probably more pressing concerns in the draft. But any heat where you see 3 guys go sub 150 is a tough competition. Like the semifinals that we were in didn't have 3 guys that went sub 150. So it was a tough matchup. The guys were a bit fatigued, a bit off where they'd been prior. And in a few days' time, when they got a bit more rest, they were quite a bit sharper. So, wasn't the best result when you compare it just apples to apples to the women's, but wasn't I don't think really cause for concern or unexpected by any stretch.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. And sort of looking at the next event, the male 50 freestyle, Dylan, you had Sergey Fesikov and Michael Chadwick swim for you in this event. Sergey swam at 2180 and Michael swam at 2150, which are 2 good results for both of them. I'm not taking any way away from them, but you had a lot of flexibility in terms of who to put in this male 50 freestyle. Just to name a couple: Andrei Govarov, Brant Hayden, Blake Peroni. There was quite a bit of flexibility on your side. How did you come up with the decision of putting Sergey and Michael in this race?
Yeah, I think this is where some of the strategy came in on just the lineup and what levels of fatigue guys were dealing with, and managing expectations going into the season too. We had a lot of guys that were very similar speeds in the 50 and 100 free. Especially when you look at Yuri Kissel, Brent Hayden, who primarily swam relays for us, and that was kind of the agreement going into the season. But we were able to get Brent into some individual events in one of the matches, which was great. Yuri, maybe if we had had another match, we would have been able to do the same. But the way it worked out, I think we rested Chadwick the event that Brent swam individually, which was good for Michael. He was able to get a bit more rest, so he's a little bit sharper here. Sergey's kind of almost the sprint version of Jay Lelliott, where he was asked to do a lot of different events and really kind of be a team player. We were constantly moving him around in sprint events, and he helped us out a lot in that regard. So I think here it was really just kind of balancing workload. We'd asked a lot out of Blake Peroni for the regular season. I think the 50, 100, 200 plus relays is a pretty rough combo to do 4 times in a couple weeks. So putting Sergey in there definitely allowed us to get some rest for the other guys.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely the 50 freestyle was an event where you play a lot with the lineups, as you mentioned, a lot of swimmers there. But James, talking about playing with the lineups, that's what, in my opinion, you did here, using Chad Leclos and Sergey Shevtsov, who finished in 6th and 7th position. Maybe it's not what one of the most strongest team in the ISL wants to finish in those positions, but why didn't give the opportunity to Ben Proud? Why Chad, knowing that he has a lot of races during that day and on the other day and relays, and it's being a lot involved in the team aspect, Why not Ben?
Yeah, that comes down to the team selection. In the ISL, you're only allowed, just generally speaking to everyone at home as well, they're only allowed 12 individual athletes that can race in the individual events. So a lot of people have, generally asked, why don't you put this swimmer in there? When that way you can't, because you're only allowed the 12 athletes. So when you look around, you might want to put Clement in, but then he's got the 200 back, the 100 free in the relay, 100 back, then he's doing 4 events. Evgeny, then it just doesn't, around those at that time just doesn't work. So you basically got to look at someone that can handle the load. Like we looked at Chad, like we could have put Ben in, but then then you've got to pull Sergei out of individual races or someone else. And then the way that you construct the teams, it's actually quite a jigsaw puzzle. It's like you can pull one person out, but then then it's suddenly you're weaker in a lot of other events. So basically we made the call. We could have put Ben in, but at that point Sergei was swimming faster in the relays than what Ben was. So therefore, just on performance, you as a head coach or general manager, you have to base your decision making on what you see in front of you. And Sergei at that point was delivering better swims in the relays, so he gets the nod. Just the logic with putting Chad in as well. You have to have someone in the event, and that he worked best. And if you look at the events around, and that's how we maximized our points.
Thanks, James. And another question regarding this: did Chad actually ask you to swim the 50 freestyle? Because I know Chad is a huge fan of the sprint freestyle events, and he has his leaders of sprint freestyle. So did he at all ask you, did he want to swim this really bad?
Well, I asked him, and he bit my hand off because we put him in the skins. We did actually put him in the freestyle skins in one of the matches. But it was quite a brutal schedule for him. The 2 fly, the 2 relays, the 53 all in one day. But Chad's one of those athletes that can handle a lot of races and swim at a good level. Like we spoke earlier about resting Florent, bit heavier guy. You asked me, how's his recovery? Yeah, he's just, the big heavy guys over 100 kilos, like Nathan Adrian. We had Nathan Adrian in season 1. You looked at him after skins, you had to scrape him up off the floor. So the heavy guys, they struggle with the back-to-back and the skins especially. But Chad's a very light, he's athletic, he's dynamic, his main events the 2 fly, so he can handle these these stand-up race, and he enjoys it. That's why we put him in.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, and James,
I have just one quick question. Sorry, Rena.
yes.
I wish we had a Tokyo Frog Kings representative here, but unfortunately we don't. So I'm going to ask this question to you. 20.9 from Bruno Fratis, from a person who pretty much misses every single turn in a short course meters format. How impressive was this for you, and how dangerous do you think Bruno Fratis can potentially be now in the long course meters version of this race?
Bruno is a great swimmer. He doesn't enjoy short course too much, but what you actually saw is once he broke the 21-second barrier, he actually had a newfound love for swimming short course. He won the race, and obviously Bruno is one of those characters. He loves winning. He loves to be in the number 1 place. And it was an impressive swim for him. Like Bruno, when he gets the long course, he'll carry a lot more speed through his 50s. He's a guy that generally progresses through the length, the 50-meter pool. The water tends to get in his way. So no, he really had a breakthrough meet there for him, and everyone's got their own sort of things they're slightly better at, and it was nice to see him really improve his short course swimming.
Thank you,
Yeah.
James.
And Saskia, Maxim Lovanovsky already swam under 21 seconds. Now it's 21:07. Mark Orsi finished in 5th place. That was a very decent, very good result for Team Iron. In your own words, what do you think Maxim was lacking in order to get that victory to defeat Bruno Fratos, especially knowing that Maxim has been faster than that 20.98 that Bruno went?
I think for Maxime, the 21:07 was, for this time, is good. Before, only the first match was under the 21. So I think for Maxime, it was a good race in a lower 21, and also to finish at the 2nd place. And also for Marco, I think it was for Marco was a good 53 in this with this swimmers around him. Just good one.
Thank you, Saskia. And yeah, seeing Marco after the swim, it seemed like some pressure was alleviated from him for some reason. Like he seemed more cheerful when you look at him. He was joking around a little bit more. And we won't discuss this event, unfortunately, this time, but later on in the match in the 100 IM, he pulled off the victory there. How much did this 50 freestyle play a role in the victory in the 100 IM later? Because it seemed like he gained some confidence here. Would you agree with this?
I think it was more relaxing, and also after the whole team Iron was grow up in with a lot of fun, and also Marco was more joking around the matches, and also with this 53, I think this was to bring him up to a fastest 100 medley.
Okay, thank you, Saskia. And diving into the next event, the female 50 freestyle, Saskia, Melanie Heineke and Radhani Kramajoya, the two people that has historically in the season of ISL have been sort of a 1-2 guaranteed for you in this event, as to say. How down was the team, if at all, after respectively Ranomi lost to Sarah and Melanie lost to Femke? Still amazing results, 23.84 for Melanie and 23.59 for Ranomi. But did it really hit the morale that sort of the both respective athletes lost to the respective athletes of Energy Standard, their rivals, as to say?
No, I think for Ranomi it was good with Sarah and more competition. I think only Melanie was a little bit down to swim after finished in the 4th place, but for a whole team Iron, it was okay.
Yeah, and also talking about Ranomi, hearing some interviews, well, listening to some interviews to Ranomi, he mentions that he enjoys swimming under pressure. That's what makes her the swimmer he has been during the past 12 years, Olympic champion, world record holder. Do you think that the ISL is the perfect format for Ranomi because of that pressure?
Yes. She also a lot of racing, not every day, but for us as Team Iron, it was a perfect time when the match followed each other. So for us and also for Ranomi and I think Melanie, it was a good moment to race with energy. Also for the semi-final. I think also for Ranomi, it was a good to focus with a more, not only on her own, but also with some pressure from the outside.
For sure.
Definitely.
And just another question to you, Saskia. Ranomi swam the 100 fly earlier in this match. And this 100 fly was significantly faster than any of the previous 100 flies she swam. What changed there? And you kind of look at the drop of time in the 100 fly, and the natural question is, why didn't it happen in the 50 freestyle?
I don't know. No, I think there's only also some mental game for Ranomi to swim a faster 100 fly, and also before this match we talk a lot about strategy from whole team Iron, and I think that's also for Ranomi a good to know, not only swimming for herself but also for the whole team. And 100 fly was better than the match before, so yeah, it was a good.
And James, talking about this 50 freestyle on the women's side, we already discussed with Saskia about Ranomi. Sarah Ranomi, one of the biggest rivalries, in my opinion, that there is and there has been in the women's 50 freestyle. But there seems that Sarah always, during the past few years, she's always ahead of Ranomi, in long course. in short course, which is Ranomi's specialty. She's the world record holder. What do you think is that characteristic that Sarah has that makes her so special? And also, another question followed to that. Sarah has been on the international stage since she was 15 years old, being world champion in Rome. And there's a lot of swimmers, Ivan already mentioned that point on another podcast, Missy Franklin, Ruta Mailutite, who began very well when they were 15, 16 years old, but when they get to a specific age, 2022, it seems that their careers stopped. But Sarah is not that case. What's that special thing that Sarah has, in your opinion?
So I'll just talk firstly about the first question in the race. Like obviously Ranomi and Sarah, they know each other very well. They've been racing for years, well over 10 years. They've been racing against each other, and both of them have, they're both incredible swimmers. One's Ranomi double Olympic champion from London, Sarah Olympic champion and world record holder in the 53 world record holder, Olympic champion from Rio in the 100 fly. So they're both incredible athletes, and sometimes I guess they're sick of seeing each other. They race every European short course, world short course, European long course. That's a great thing about the Europeans, especially the Swedish national team and the Dutch national team. They seem to race every competition, and they really support everything in swimming. And so that they know each other very well. Like Sarah knows that Ranomi is an exceptional starter and turner. Like Ranomi, I've done all the analysis on Ranomi's start. She's the fastest I've ever seen. She's the fastest on any analysis system in the world, 5.8 to 15, which anyone watching at home, that's a man's start. Some of the, that's just outstanding. An average start for a female is around about 6'2 to 6'3. Ranomi can go 5'8, and that's just to 15 meters. So we know what Ranomi's awesome characteristics are, and Sarah knows how to race her. She keeps calm when Ranomi's underwater kicking, going away from her, and she knows that she can outswim her in certain aspects. But that, it's, sometimes it goes one way, sometimes it goes the other. That sport, Ranomi got the better of Sarah in 2019 in some of the skins. Sarah got the better of her this year in certain events, but that's just swimming, that's sport. And there's an amazing mutual respect between the two of them. You can tell that over time. I think one thing in swimming, you just develop over time as people, and your competition, you see over the years, you respect each other a lot more because you realize the work and the effort to stay good for so long. The second part of the question was what is special about Sarah, and why has she been, since 2009, she was world champion. So we're talking 11 years. This is her 12th year of being one of the best swimmers in the world. To be honest with you, it's just she has a desire to get better, and she just loves swimming and racing. Like I'm very fortunate that I've worked with a lot of, I call them, serial winners, serial offenders. And people like Chad, like Sarah, Caleb, and they're addicted to winning. They love racing, and they actually love the sport. So Sarah, she loves to go training. She loves to go to the pool. She loves to be around people at the pool, and you see it more and more with people that are on top of their game for a long time. It's a genuine love. It's not like I win once and I disappear. And you see a lot of swimmers, once they've achieved the pinnacle, they go. Because they change and something's happened, agents, money, the passion's not there. But with Sarah, it's just a genuine passion. It doesn't matter about everything else that's going on. She loves to swim, and I think we see that probably, for Ranomi to be as good as what she does as well. Like, they're special people that love what they do, and it's not a job to them. It's a passion. They get up, they go to the pool. They love being at the pool. They love putting their bodies through pain and work, and they love the search to get better. And I think these two young ladies have got a lot longer in front of them. They might want to choose to have families at certain points or whatever, but what we saw with Dara Torres and there's no reason why that's any reason to stop a swimming career anymore. So they've got a lot of years left in them, and I'm pretty sure they'll be racing each other in 5 to 10 years as well.
Yeah.
No, for sure, James. Thank you. And you're totally right. I mean, it's very interesting of a pattern to see because me and Bruno have been talking to a bunch of athletes from the ISL, and one of the questions I tend to ask is, what motivates you in swimming? What keeps you in it? Do you like competing? Do you like winning? Do you like training and being part of a team in the sense of belonging to something? Or do you like the actual process of swimming? And do you enjoy the actual activity? And majority of the athletes respond with, we actually enjoy the activity of swimming. And that's mind-boggling from my point of view. 10, 15, 20 years of swimming careers, and they still are in love with swimming. We were actually speaking with one of your athletes, Ilya Shimanovic, 2 days ago, and he said that the only thing that keeps him in swimming and this is his love for the actual activity. It's interesting to see. Thank you, James. And with this, let's move to our next. You wanted to say something?
No, I was just saying, yeah, I agree. Oh. That's it.
Let's move to our next event, and it is the female 200 meters individual medley. And James, I'm going to capitalize on your time a little bit, but I have a question to you straight off the bat here. Once again, Marie-Sophie Harvey and Anastasia Shkurda representing Energy Standard in this race. 208.14 for Marie-Sophie and 207.69 from Anastasia. Two great results, but my big question is, why is your individual medley specialist, Marie-Sophie Harvey, keeps losing in battles against her teammate, Anastasia Shkurda, who logically should be more proficient in the butterfly events, but 100 IM, last month she outtouched Marie-Sophie Harvey in the 100 IM. 200 IM now. What's going on with Anastasia? Is she becoming an IMer now?
Well, Anastasia is still quite, she's a young athlete. And Olga, her coach, wants to keep the global development going with her, which I think is totally the right strategy. There's one thing in swimming with young athletes, we can become too focused too soon. And I think it's a great, looking at Anastasia's development, it's a great lesson for any sort of development coaches out there, but not to get too specific too soon. Like Anastasia I think she's got the world junior record, 100 medley, 100 fly, must be close on 100 back, or she got 200 medley Belarusian record there. It's like she has a very, very big spectrum of events that she can swim, and Olga is not buckling under the pressure just to go straight for the 100 fly, which a lot of people would see. She could be a real surprise, win a medal in a major event, but also keeping her going on the big, all the distances. She was very, very dynamic and very useful in ISL. In ISL, she's going to really develop into one of these athletes that can do everything, and that's critical for any team. So I think the ISL format, it doesn't reward swimmers that are good at one thing. If you're very specialized and you're good at one thing, it's actually, the teams are going to be looking, should I recruit you or should I not recruit you? Because I need you for relays. I need you to be multi-eventer. I need, because I only have 12 picks. I need swimmers that are very diverse. So, what Olga's doing there, Anastasia can go 100 back, 200 back, 50 back, 100 medley, 200 medley, 100 fly. She hates the 200 fly, but I made her do it a couple of times.
I don't blame her.
She gave me some very bad looks in 2019 season. But, Anastasia is still on this very big improvement trajectory. There's no need to change. Like in coaching, we get excited, but there's no need to change her development. Keep it going, and she'll have an incredible career in ISL. She's very young, and it's almost as if the ISL is made for her. And we'll see over time how she can, she keeps that going. The 200 medley, 100 medley, backstrokes, flies, and her freestyle's not shabby either.
For sure. And James, yeah, you actually have two gems like this, because Marie-Sophie, you can say all the same words about Marie-Sophie, especially with this season, seeing her drop amazing 50 back results, 2 back, 4 IM, 100 IM. The spectrum is just mind-boggling. Are you actually mindfully going after these young athletes that are capable of swimming a lot of events? Because Zir Krigor is another example of someone who can swim just about everything and who's relatively young.
Yeah, that's the format. You need to really understand as a GM or head coach, it's not about just having these individual superstars that can do, like I said, can do the one thing. Like last year, Craig and Mary Sophie were two of our most important athletes, and I know they don't quite get the credit they deserve because they're not the MVPs. They're not on the winning the events, but I'd say when there was no jackpots, when the jackpot rule hurt us a lot this year, and like we've done all the maths and would have been right with Cali Condors in the final if we'd have done the same rules as the previous season. But the jackpot rule really hurt athletes like Craig and Mary, people that are consistently, it's knocking on the door of top 4, inside the top 4 or 5. That are fantastic athletes that can multi-event, but were sometimes not picking up the points they quite deserved. But no, Mary's progression throughout the whole ISL was phenomenal. Another athlete that didn't quite have the best of luck throughout the lockdown, it was luck. Depending in Canada, it was very, very. I know Dylan can probably touch on this a bit more. Canada's very strict. There's no messing around in Canada. The pools were closed. If anyone tested positive in the training group, the whole training group's locked down. It's not a society where they can just bend the rules. So Mary had come into ISL, actually hadn't swum in a pool for 10 days. So it was no wonder that her form actually picked up as it went through, because it was just a natural training effect.
Makes
Definitely,
sense.
James. In Dylan, you mentioned being an expansion team. It was difficult to get those superstar swimmers to make one of the strongest teams in the ISL. I mean, that was a difficulty for you, as you already talked about that. But James made a great point here, the jackpot rule, a new team that comes directly to that specific rule that wasn't present on the first season. How much did impact mentally your swimmers and your coaching staff? Especially, what were the talks between you as an interim GM and the head coaches and the assistant coaches? I mean, what were you expecting? And once you experienced it, was the same thing that you were expecting, or was a completely different thing?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was a challenge as an expansion team. Like, to be quite frank, there weren't, when you already have 8 teams that have most of the best swimmers in the world there, most of your real jackpot point threats are gone. Like, there's not a Caleb Dressel waiting around that hasn't been signed. So it's, from our perspective, we kind of had to James' point, we had to kind of build a team that was a lot of people similar to Marie Sophie Harvey and Anastasia on his team, where we had people that were useful in a lot of events. We had a few stars that were able to get some good jackpot points. Anton McKee, Kylie Mass had a couple good jackpots, but largely it was, without a draft or anything like that, it's kind of an impossibility for us to just pop in and have people that could have these huge jackpots, especially if you look at where most of the big jackpots came from. A lot of them came from 50s. Well, there's not many Florent Manadous or Caleb Dressels or Nick Santos just sitting around, right? So it's hard to pick those people up. So we had a lot of depth people that in this event in particular, 200 IM, Tess Chaplua. I pretty proud of being able to get her for the team. I think she's someone that flew under the radar a bit because I think her big improvement happened in the last year, and then because of COVID and everything, I think she was kind of robbed of her opportunity to shine at NCAAs. I think she would have been a lot more of a known entity had NCAAs happened. But we were able to pick her up, and she had a few event wins. Was able to get in a lot of events. 200 IM and this meet in particular, like I mentioned at the beginning, I think she's the only person on our team that had to do more events than less events. So she was a real workhorse and really able to shoulder a tough schedule. And it was people like that we concentrated on finding. Yeah.
And for example, you mentioned that there's not a lot of Flo Manadous, not a lot of Caleb Dressels available to the expansion teams or in the draft. I mean, I don't think that any GM or coach is gonna let Caleb or Flo to get away in the draft, you know. But
If they do, they can
James,
let me know.
but James said before that the ISL doesn't reward swimmers who are good in one thing. But you mentioned there's not a lot of Nicolas Santos, for example. Nicolas Santos' specialty is only the 50 fly, and he can swim the 100 butterfly, but that's not where he jackpots the field, you know. So his specialty is only one event, and it's the 50 fly, and he helps in the relay. So would you agree or would you disagree to what James already mentioned, that the ISL doesn't reward swimmers who are good in one thing? Because I mean,
I think that I think it's true on both sides. I think James and I maybe think a little bit more along the lines, not to speak for James too much here, but more along the lines of maybe the first season rules. Like without jackpot, it definitely incentivizes people that are good at one event. Like a Bruno Fratis in season 1 isn't as useful as someone that can swim a number of different events, right? But with the jackpot, that kind of throws a wrinkle into it where you can't have someone like Nick Santos swim one event, get 30 points, and it's very hard to overcome that. You know, with depth swimmers alone. So I think you know, from a team aspect, the jackpot can be hard sometimes. But there's a bit of truth in both. I think with if you can be a specialist at one event with jackpot, like it you can get a pretty big point total there.
Thank you, Dylan. And you say there's not many Nick Santoses on the market laying around, but you have a long course meters version of Nick Santos on your team. You have Andrei Govorov, who has one fast 50 fly in him, and then he needs a very long time of recovery. But you have him on the team. It's just a question of making him fast short course now, right?
Yeah, which is a big. He's definitely a long course specialist. Let's put it at that.
Thank you, Dylan. And Saskia, a little bit of a quick question about the 2 AM here. 207.91 from Katinka. This is like, if we talk about the old Katinka, of course, this is not something she would be happy about. But in this season, she was a little bit out of shape, and this is on the better side of her results on the 2 AM. Was she happy about this? And were you guys happy?
Yeah, I was happy to see Katinka swimming, but no, I think after match 1, Katinka was accepted to swim not her best time and to swim 207 or 206. But I think after these matches, she was okay.
Thank you, Saskia. And with that, let's hop into the next event, and it is the male 50 breaststroke. And let me tell you, this is an exciting one. Saskia, Rose Murdoch, and Emre Sakci swimming for you. 26.99 from Ross. And I think this is going to stand for a lot of people participating in this race right here. But it must be very frustrating to swim a sub 27.50 and get jackpotted. But when you have Emre Sakci dropping at 25.43, I guess you don't have any other choices. How excited were you guys when this happened? And how did this sort of maybe switch the mood of the team a little bit? If it was not already at an all-time high, was it after this?
No, when Emre swims 50 breaststroke, you know it's gonna be fast. So for us as team and also for Emre, it was good to see to jackpot a lot of swimmers and stole the points. So yeah, we are as team, and also Emre was very happy with this 25.4.
Okay, thank you. Dylan, what about you? I mean, Eric Pearson and Anton McKee, 27.18 and 26.90, yet 0 points. How disappointing was this?
I mean, I can't say it's overly expected. Anton, he's pretty solid through all 3 distances in breaststroke, but he definitely leans towards the 200. That's his specialty for sure. I mean, he won the 200 at this meet and was pretty solid all the way through. I think that 200, he was hurting quite a bit going into this meet. He managed to stick it out, get the win in the 200, and I think sort of needed the rest quite badly after that. So he sort of started to see his performances slide off a little bit as the meet progressed. Not a terrible swim in the 50. Eric Pearson's a 200 specialist by far. So anything we can get out of him in the 100 and the 50 is a bonus. You can see in this with the jackpot rule, like the 50s, you saw a lot more monster jackpots in the 50s than in longer events. So I think it's hard. Like there's not many people in the world, as we saw, that can go sub 26 all the time in 50 breasts. So you kind of do what you can. And honestly, if they had been a little bit faster, like we're only talking a point or two, maybe, if they had gone half a second faster. So it is what it is. There wasn't really, I think, a lot that could be done in this event.
Talking about breaststroke specialists in sprint breaststroke, James, I mean, you were the world champion in 2003, and I think there's no one better than I can ask this question to. What makes a good sprint breaststroker? I mean, what's that characteristic that all of these guys that participate in the ISL and win world championships and medals at the international competitions have?
Well, now we're seeing an evolution of sort of the breaststroke technique. I know everyone's been talking a lot about breaststroke kick and what's legal and what's illegal. I'm a little bit tired of explaining that Ilya's kick is actually, in his swimming, is fantastic. He's very narrow. So what we're seeing is an evolution of how the breaststrokers swim. Like if you watch Adam Peaty, how he swims, is just so high in the water. His hips are glued to the surface of the water. The details are very good, like the starts and turns. Like no one has bad starts and turns. And they're all quite, the guys that are swimming very, very fast, they're all quite big guys. So they're all engaged in a good strength and conditioning program. You can see Ilya, Adam, and Emre. They're three of the biggest guys on the pool side. So I think strength and conditioning for the sprint breaststroke is very, very prominent. But the guys have got no bad skills anymore. Like you're not seeing people win now swimming ugly. Their starts and their turns are all exceptional. And the kick and everything is becoming very narrow. Like the whole stroke the breaststroke itself used to be quite big and open, but now it's all very narrow pulls, very narrow kicks. They're pushing the limits of the law on a lot of things. But if you actually look underwater, a lot of the camera work at the actual swimming, I'm not talking about going into walls or turns. If you actually look at the swimming, everything is very narrow and it's very compact. And that's the same in the women's breaststroke, you can see. And everyone has their own little individual styles or takes on it. Is it body undulation going into walls or what? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense, James. Thank you. And you actually answered my question before me asking it. But James, this sort of confusion regarding the breaststroke kick seems like it has existed for a while now. I believe there was accusations regarding Adam Peaty, Cameron Vanderberg at some point. Cody Miller was a big name. Molly Hannes, Ilya now. Do you think there should be a rule change in swimming regarding breaststroke? Maybe allow a little bit more freedom, maybe restrict it a little bit more. Or we were talking to Ilya 2 days ago, and he thought the greatest idea would be to introduce underwater cameras for the judges. What is your stance on that?
Yeah, I think Ilya has unfairly taken a lot of criticism. Like, I don't like coaches or anyone putting things on social media, and it's actually quite petty. I think it's just people whining and complaining about what's happening rather than having direct conversations. But look, things are happening within the rules, and there's also things that are happening outside the rules. But this has been going on for 20 years. Like these debates. Even when I was racing, I think Romanos Alafantis was the first guy to really bring in fly kick on breaststroke. And what you've got to understand is there are rules. In most sports, if it's offside in football or soccer, in Formula One, people are going to push the limit. So there's a rule of 15 meters an underwater kick. But I've seen many, many records be broken when swimmers go past 15, and it's all an interpretation of the judges that are there at the time. Sometimes people get called on things, some people don't. But if an athlete is if that's the rules, athletes will take the risk to try and push them to the next level because they want to win. It's a competitive advantage. So, and if they're outside the rules, they should be disqualified. And with underwater footage, I think that's a fantastic idea. And why do we not have underwater footage now? We could, ISL could revolutionize this, but I think it takes a lot of time to implement to get it right. But yeah, if I would thoroughly support underwater footage or some sort of timing beams or light beams at 15 meters to stop the athletes pushing the limits there. But that's just sport, in general. People do push the limits. They will find ways. And I know that the criticism that's come on a lot of levels, there are some people that are clearly breaking the rules, and there are other people that are just pushing and bending the rules, and there's people that stay well in the rules. I'm pretty sure that, and also every breaststroker that's raced, I'm going to say this openly, in the last 20, 30 years, short course meters, short course yards, you come in on a half stroke, you do have a little flick to get into the wall, and you can have a body undulation, whether it's a finish off a stroke or not. But again, is it within the rules? Is it not in the rules? That's up for that judge who stood at the end of your lane to make that decision. So if the athlete chooses to make that decision to try and get to the wall, it's then the judge has got to make a decision. But the judges should also feel empowered to make the right decision if they feel that that athlete has sort of crossed the line, that they should be disqualified. Yes.
I see the point, James, but at the same time, it's so risky from the point of view of the judge. For example, you disqualify an athlete when he's sort of on the edge. And from one point of view, you kind of ruin the day for the athlete. And if not the day, you can ruin the entire year for him, if not longer, because he might be preparing for this special swim for so long. And on the other side, you might receive quite a lot of backlash nowadays. For example, DQ someone like Ilya Shimanovic, maybe some London Roar fans would be happy, but a lot of Energy Standard fans would be unhappy, because why wouldn't you DQ Cody Miller in 2016? Why wouldn't you DQ Molly Hannes in early ISL matches? It's a very ambiguous topic. I believe there should be some rules changed regarding breaststroke, but at the same time, I don't know what they should be. Maybe the underwater footage would change things. But thank you, James.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on the underwater footage. I think that clears up a lot of, it clears up a lot of ambiguity. It's there. It's okay. So you see someone do a fly kick into a wall, or there, it's very clear, and there you go, done, finished, out. Or, but like I said, with the rules, even if the rules change, coaches and swimmers are going to push them, and and this will just be a general evolution of how it's going to go. But the judges should feel empowered, and that's up to ISL and governing bodies to actually say to the judges, you will be supported in your decision making.
Thank you, James. Yeah, sooner or later you're going to have another Ryan Lochte trying to do a backstroke pull on their back or something like that. But thank you, James. And with this, let's move to our next event, and it is the male 4x100 meters freestyle. And straight from the get-go, James, your B team consisted of Billis to Zirk to Zilkin to Proud, and your A team was Relov to Leclos to Kolesnikov to Shevtsov. And this seemed like a little bit like your A team counting out Floyd Manadou. And you guys came short. Were you at all frustrated after this relay? Because Klim, on one hand, swam at 45.4, which is very impressive. But on the other hand, you guys lost something I believe you guys were the favorites for. Were you at all frustrated after this? And were the guys that participated in the A team frustrated at all?
Yeah, they were unhappy, but sometimes that's swimming. When you swim 47.2 on the last leg versus Brent Hayden 46.1, that's a huge last leg from Brent, and that's what happens. Is the guys were frustrated, but then they also Brent did an incredible job on the back end, and they can't control it. But what we did from this was all learning. Like we weren't actually massively competitive in that event as we went through, but then we just got better and better, and we actually cleared up from there on in the ISL. So it was frustrating, but sometimes that happens. And seeing the return of Brent Hayden, Brent Hayden in the swimming hat, flying down the last 25, his game. We saw him coming. We just didn't expect him to get there, but he did it in quite emphatic form.
Yeah. From a spectator point of view, I'm friends with Sergei Shevtsov, but I was rooting for Brent Hayden on these last meters because that was reminiscent of Jason Slezak's performance in 2008 a little bit.
And
But,
talking about Brent, I mean, Dylan, how much did Brent bring to the team, especially being a rookie team and counting all the experience on international competitions that Brent has? And especially in this performance, because I think that afterwards, the victory of the Titans here in the men's freestyle relay, I think that the overall mindset of the team changed. Will you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, this was a big swim for Brent in terms of experience. Like, obviously, he's got tons of experience. He literally has 2 decades more experience than our youngest swimmer. So he brought a lot to the table, a lot of leadership, a lot of him and Kylie Maas were our team captains, and they did a great job. Everyone to an extent, I think, in ISL for the most part has been around the international scene for a while, but there are a handful that have either are relatively new to this, are younger, or maybe just haven't gotten a shot at a bigger international event, or B, haven't done something in a team environment before. Especially, I think some of the swimmers maybe that are from smaller countries that typically don't have or never did NCAAs or something like that. So Brent was great in taking swimmers under his wing, helping out, whether it was in the pool, out of the pool. But this was a big swim for Brent because he wasn't there just to be, the dad to all the the swimmers on the team. He was there to perform as well. And Brent's a guy that is very competitive and wants to win. Like he's not doing this comeback just to have fun. He wants to see what he can get out of himself for it. So he swam pretty well. Like to be honest, his 50 had been pretty solid going into ISL. So we knew in the 50s he'd probably be okay. But given we'd have him on relays, like his 100 was kind of a bit of an X factor. What would he be able to do? And he was pretty solid early. We thought he thought, and it was hard to say whether he was being too hard on himself or knew he could get more out of himself, where he wasn't as happy with himself with some of his early efforts, where he was 46 high. But he ended up being right. He knew that he could get more out of himself. And Brent, more than anything, is a racer. Like I don't think you could have put him into a more ideal situation there where everything's on the line. He's a little bit behind. There's a big relay win. So it really, as soon as he flipped at the 50 and Sergei was in reach there, I think Byron and I kind of looked at each other and knew that he was going to be able to pull it off, just because he was locked in. Like he was ready to race and wanted to give it all. And 46.1 is a great swim for him. The other guys swam great too. I think gets overshadowed a little bit in Brent's kind of moment of glory, but like you had Kolesnikov on Energy Standard go 45.4. Like you need to overcome that somehow. So we didn't have anybody go anywhere near 45. Well, I guess Brent was the closest to 45, but that required to overcome that. You had to have
46.2 from Blake.
Yeah, no, and you had to have 3 guys put up solid times. Like Yuri Kissel, I never probably got the thanks that he deserved, but he was consistent the entire way through, and leading off with 47.0 is a solid swim for him.
Thank you, Dylan. And with this, let's hop to our next event, and it is the female 400 freestyle. And Saskia, straight away, Danica Ludlow and Veronika Andrusenko representing you in this race. And this is kind of a weird race in a sense for me for Team Iron, because if Veronika Andrusenko swam a 400 in just about any other match, she would have won the event. But unfortunately, here you have Siobhan Jorge, and of course, you have Leah Smith, who ended up winning the event. How would you, what do you think about Veronica's performance in this event? And how was she happy after this? Because it seemed like this was a lot better of a race for her than the previous 400 freestyles.
Yeah, I think also in this match, good competition from Tokyo and Energy. And yeah, Veronica was I think a stable factor of Team Iron. She swam every time around the 4x4.0. So yeah, I think she was happy. You can saw on her face if she happy or not. So yeah, I think for me as assistant coach, I was happy to see some close finish with number 1 and 2. So yeah, I think it was a good performance.
Okay, thank you. And Saskia, talking just a little bit about the Russian/Slavic representation of on your team, Ustinova, Andrusenko, Zevina. How well do they fit into the team? And is any like translation required, or do they have a good level of English?
We have Google Translate, so it was good to translate the questions. And no, there were also Maxim and Maria. They speak Russians and another language, so they can translate. Or also for me, my English is not good, so I try to speak a lot English with other people, so I learn a lot. And also the Russian girls and coach, they learn a lot from each other. So the language will be better than last week.
All right, thank you, Saskia. But your English is great. This is like the fourth podcast you do with us, a 2-hour podcast. Your English is amazing. But with this being said, James, Susanna Jakobosch and Siobhan Jorge. 4:06:03 from Susanna and 3:59:18 from Siobhan. How would you analyze the performance of these two girls here? And was Siobhan at all frustrated after losing to Leah? Because let me tell you this, in the season of ISL, Siobhan did not lose many races at all.
From a team performance, second and fifth in sort of the more, well, it's the distance event, isn't it, of ISL? We were quite happy. Susie was great, 4:06. You know, she swam some out of her skin for that. And Siobhan, you know, she is a very much a sort of a 200 base swimmer, 200 base swimmer. So the 400 is the big step up for her. You know, she likes doing it, but it's not quite the same. It's not what she's naturally is her specialty. So Siobhan's best performance in the 400 was pretty much the first meet where she come in off the big conditioning block. And obviously, as you go through, for certain swimmers that are more focused on relays and the shorter distances, it's hard to maintain the yardage and the work that's necessary to maintain a 400. But, you know, we weren't disappointed. It's another time that she went under 4 minutes. And that's fun. You know, it's a fantastic swim to go sub 4 minutes. You're also right. She didn't lose many races in the ISL. She had an incredible season, and she really was one of the standout performers. And, you know, we weren't disappointed with these results in any way, shape or form.
Thank you, James. And James, I have one more question to you regarding Leah Smith. James, I know as a coach, you pay a lot of attention to technique. Mm-hmm. And you make sure your swimmers are as efficient as possible in the water. But Leah has a very unorthodox technique in long distance freestyle. And I would like to hear from you. What do you think about it? And just if we imagine if Leah was your athlete, Would you try to change it at all, or would you try to stick with what she has and maybe improve on it a little bit?
An athlete of her level, I wouldn't touch it. I think, in swimming, we can all look and we can all make our summary judgments on athletes, but they all have their individual style. Gregorio Paltrineri, as well as, because sometimes people talk a lot about his turns, but that's him. That's his style, and they all have their individual style. And if an athlete is working and performing at that level, I think the golden rule is you don't try and reinvent the wheel, as we say in English. You can consolidate what they've got. But what I do with any athlete that joins me, I generally don't touch their technique for an extended period of time, because they have to get used to like new training methods. But I take time to settle them in before I change too much or make any slight changes. But yeah, I'm very aesthetic based coach. I honestly believe that if it looks good, it goes fast, like a racing car.
I think that statement holds a lot of truth, especially in swimming, with the amount of resistance the water provides. If you do something wrong, that blocks you quite a bit. But hey, Leah made it work for her.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it may look not as aesthetically pleasing as, for example, Showman swimming the 400 freestyle, but somehow she makes it work, just like Gregorio does against Misha Romanchuk in the long distance events. Yeah.
Misha's sometimes too beautiful. He needs to get a little bit more aggressive at times. But that's why swimming's different, and we all approach it differently and get similar results with different athletes. People grow up in different cultures, different systems, and so we have to respect differences. And if someone gets awesome results doing it their way, then we have to always take a chapeau.
Thank you, James. And with this being said, let's move to our next event, and it is the male 4x100 meters medley relay. And Dylan, straight away, a question to you. You guys were quite close to challenging Energy Standard and Tokyo Frog Kings. Your team was Ryan Shane to Anton McKee to Sergey Fesikov to Blake Perrone, your A team. And sort of my big question to you, and Bruno already touched upon this a little bit, and this is the draft period and the recruiting. And to me, when I look at it, the big hole you guys have is that 100 meters butterfly. Because sure, Sergey can do it, but it's really, really far from his speciality, as to say. And did you ever consider exchanging Sergey for maybe someone like Daniil Pasinkov, who has a great 200 meters butterfly, or maybe even trying someone like Brent Hayden, for example? Maybe he would be able to surprise. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's no. I don't think I'm giving any strategy on our team away by saying that getting a 100 flyer is probably our biggest focus for next year on the men's side. It's definitely a hole. Like you look at the other two teams that beat us in this event, and they've both had guys who are sub 50 in the 100. And if you don't have anybody that's can do that, it's going to be tough to be competitive.
2 seconds is too much.
Yeah, it's too much to ask of the other guys. We were competitive in the other 3 legs, but yeah, if you're missing a leg by that much, and Shane Ryan is probably our fastest 100 flyer, and you can't have him in 2 places at once, right? So yes, Sergey, I mean, all the credit to him. He, like I said earlier, he filled a lot of holes. You couldn't ask for much more than him. He's not a 4900 flyer, so he was doing everything he could, and that's. If you asked him, I don't think he would rate 100 fly as his favorite event. So him having to do it at every single meet, he was definitely a team player there. As far as other people went, like we found that was the best combo that worked. James mentioned it earlier, but it is a real juggling and sort of jigsaw puzzle of who slots in where. Pasnikov would have been a choice as well. He's I think we got him in one of the 100 flies at one of the matches, but given his other workload with 200 IM and just the level of kind of, because all these swimmers also individually have their own sort of level of fitness and level that they can work, that they can still maintain their top level. Sometimes it's worth maybe sacrificing some of that top level so that they can swim another event. You know, if they're really strong across the board, maybe it's worth getting 98% output from them to add on an extra event. But for a guy like Pasnikov, it's better to you know, to get him in the events that he's focused on, and Sergey's able to shoulder the load. And we weren't trying to kill Brent Hayden, so I don't think throwing him into 100 fly would have gone super well. But who knows? Maybe that was the biggest mistake of the season. Maybe secretly a 4800 flyer, and we'll never know. But yeah, it's 100 fly is
one
definitely
day.
a focus. Yeah.
If you don't try it, you will never know. And actually, Byron already made that statement that 100 flyer on the men's side is one of your main focus on that draft. But James, your team got the victory here, but this is gonna be maybe a weird question for you, because I wanted to ask you about the reaction times of your swimmers. Neither of your swimmers, Ilya Shimanovic, Chad Leclos, or Sergei Shepso, swam like prior in the US in the NC2A system, where the starts relays are one of the main focus here in the US. So do you think that having that background, your relays could have been a little bit faster and not being so close, for example, here to the Tokyo Frog Kings? Because, for example, Anton McKee or Blake Pieroni, swimmers that did participate in the NC2A system, are 0.2 faster than all of your swimmers, well, Ilya and Chad only. So how often do you practice starts and relays during training? And is this a focus for you?
Honestly, no. It's not a massive focus for us. What I actually told the guys before they go around to race, like, we knew we had the strongest team. It's more about being safe. Like last year, we had 2 relay disqualifications, 2 meets in a row, and we actually know from experience that you get a relay team disqualified, that can mean your meet being over. I know now this year it's different with the jackpot and everything, but in the previous years, in last year's ISL, you got a relay team disqualified. That's it. It's over. It's finished because of the double points. But generally what I said to the guys before they went round to that race, because I based myself a lot out the back when I can actually work with the swimmers in between the races and everything, rather than in the boxes. But it's, you know, just be safe. You know, be safe. Take your time. Let the swimming do the work. Of course, you know that some of these guys don't have the US college system experience with the run-throughs, but you know, we've seen that it makes a difference, yes, but it's a small difference. And we asked that none of the teams, and even our B team, you know, 0.3 reaction times there, they didn't push. It was just pure on the fact that we just be safe, get the points, bank the points, win the event, get the skins, done, do your job, take care of business. That's it, nothing else. And other events, I did ask them to push the takeovers, and they did. And there's so they give you heart failure at the time, but there comes a point where you can take a risk, but there was no risk in this meet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree with you on that point. Yeah.
And Saskia, touching base upon this relay, I know it probably didn't go like you guys planned, but there's something that, in my opinion, it seemed like something happened to your relay, to Glinta, to Sakchi, to Santos, to Mignon. I feel like all of these people had a much faster swim in them. I mean, 57.65 from Sakchi is very far from his 55. 51.15 from Santos is very far from his sub 50 swims. I'm not talking about 47.95 from Clement Mignon. What happened there? What happened with your A relay?
Before, we didn't know that they are swimming these times. We were thinking about that they are faster and finished before the other team. But I think this is also some that the swimmers are a little bit tired, and there's also for us to the coaches to change maybe some other swimmers to put them out of this match and put somebody else in. So I think this was one of the reasons that we can change other options to make a better relay, to maybe swim faster.
Mhm.
So also Nicolas Santos, I think with a 50 high or 50 half, it must be a better time for him. But yeah, I think
be
he was
honest with you-
tired.
To be honest with you, Saskia, Nicolas Santos is, I believe, the person who swam the best out of this A relay for himself, because 51:15 for Nicolas Santos, after already
Yeah.
swimming earlier in this match, isn't that bad at all, to be honest with you. But 57:65
No,
and 47:95, it really threw me off a little bit. But I guess
yeah, and
they're
that's
tired,
also
right?
we are changed something sometimes, Maxime and Clement, and when we change, then is Maxime also faster in the B in the of then when he's swimming in the fastest relay, and he's swimming slower. So that we didn't know how we must do choice, and yeah, I think that must be the best option, and it's a it's
Yeah, I get that. I think that Team Iron here didn't want it like to make a strong relay because the three first guys, Robert Clinton, Saki, and Santos, are the strongest ones. But Clement Mignon and Lobanovsky, I believe they switch it out to make two more even teams. And at the end, I mean, they finish in 5th and 6th, which are decent points. We're going into the next event, guys, the women's 100 backstroke. I mean, this is an event that for the Toronto Titans had a very strong feel. I mean, Kylie Mass and Lisa Bratton, who was stronger, in my opinion, in the 200-meter backstroke. But how happy were you, Dylan, with Kylie's performance here, defeating Emily Sebum and Georgia Davis? In my opinion, before that race, were in the mix to getting that victory. Kylie is known more for her 100 backstroke, but in long course mirrors, where she's world champion. So, were you surprised getting her with that victory, or were you expecting that?
And
I don't
above
think
this,
we-
was there an element of revenge? Because you guys had the exact same lineup last match, and Emily ended up taking it. So was this a little bit of revenge from the Toronto Titans?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good. I mean, we swam Energy Standard 3 times, so I think there's going to be a pretty good rivalry by the end, especially in some of the events like between Emily and Kylie, and in some of the backstrokes. There's some good back and forth. Both girls got some wins there. I mean, backstroke was always exciting for us. Like Kylie's team captain, she's really strong. Lisa's more suited for the 200, but definitely got some key points as well. Kylie, this is a good swim. As much as I think kind of the theme of the meet might have been fatigue and dealing with fatigue and things like that. This was not only the fastest 100 that Kylie had the whole ISL season, but it's the fastest she's had in probably a couple of years. It's her lifetime best 56.00, which at the time was short course world record. She it's hard to argue with that. Third match in 8 days and being able to put up a time like that. So, definitely felt good. I won't speak for Kylie, but definitely felt good for the team to get kind of that rivalry win there on Energy Standard. And anytime you have a swimmer putting up a great time, especially in kind of adverse circumstances, it was a feel good swim for the team for sure.
Sure, thank you, Dylan. And I feel like it was quite a big jackpot coming your way. 12 points from Kylie. That was amazing for you guys. That helped out quite a bit.
Yeah.
But sort of tapping into Team Iron, Saskia, Daria Ustinova, and Daria Zevina receiving 0 points in total for this race. Were you guys disappointed at all? And how did you ever wish you maybe put Katinka in the one back?
Yes, but Katinka was swimming the. No, I don't know. Yeah, there's also we put Caroline also sometime in the 100 and Katinka. So there's also a choice from this match to put Katinka in another distance to focus more on another swimmer. But yeah, for Iron, there was not a bad a good one.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at the names, Daria Ustinova and Daria Zemina, two pretty big names in the world of backstroke.
Yeah.
This, especially Daria Zemina. And yeah, it seemed a little bit devastating for you guys to receive 0 points in an event. I believe when you were recruiting, you guys were thinking it would be quite a prosperous event for you, right?
Yeah, and before after 50 meters, then I was thinking, oh, it was a good start, but then after the 50 meters, they are going slower and slower, and then we're thinking, oh no, not lose the points, but yeah, that's the match, and that's also you can not thinking, oh, I'm going to swim slower because to focus on the other distance, but you must be swim fast to for that the other teams cannot stole more points from you as swimmer. So for us as Team Iron, for was a little bit bad.
I get it. Thank you, Saskia. And James, I mean, Georgia Davis and Emily Seabaum, 57.46 and 56.45. Were you happy about these results? What do you think about them in general? And another question is, how would you analyze the progression of Georgia Davis in the last couple of years? Because I believe this is an athlete you've been working with for the longest, right? Out of Energy Standard. What is the direction Georgia is taking right now? Because she seemed like right about a year ago, she was doing really well. And then I don't know how she was training during COVID, but this ISL season didn't seem to go just about the way she probably hoped it would.
Yeah, I'll just talk about the race. Obviously, you want to win the race, and Emily, she had a real nice progression as she went through, and she got beat by Kylie. Kylie swam out of her skin on the day, but again, we picked up second and fourth. We picked up like 12 points. 12 points. So is it no more? So but we're happy with that. That you can't be disappointed with that. But yeah, Georgia, I've worked with I think it's the athlete I've worked longest in my coaching career. I've been working with her about 7 years now. Had an awesome progression. Was going to retire in 2016. Decided to carry on, just because she'd qualified for World Short Course in Windsor. So just decided to carry on in that past the Olympics. Then was interested in the new project that we were starting with Energy Standard, and she was being one of the real key athletes for us that really kicked off the program and gave our program a lot of credibility. When we were first starting the elite team, but she was another one that struggled in lockdown. I tell you what, to run an international program during a global pandemic is not an advantage, as what some podcast specialists and some media outlets might think. But when you don't actually coach your athletes for 6 months leading into an ISL season, trust me, you get no advantage. And when the people that you're working with day in, day out, and you're sending papers for them to work on their own with no coaches, essentially to what we're trying to do now in many respects, it's a huge challenge. And George, in Britain, the pools were closed. They were closed for 14 weeks. As of today, there's only, in the whole of Great Britain, there's 4 swimming pools that are open, and they are only open to the national team. So if you're not on the British national team, you cannot go to a swimming pool. It's like I said, Britain is a country like Canada. It's strictly enforcing the COVID rules. and that it's impossible to go to a leisure centre. If I wanted to go for a swim today, I'm not allowed to. If I wanted to go to Coach Georgia, I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed into that
James,
bubble.
Serpentine Lake is always open.
Oh, damn.
And James, you mentioned
I'm
the way
-2 today.
you mentioned the challenges that you faced during the pandemic, training a group of athletes that are from all over the world. But also, I know that from talking to many coaches from Energy Standard, that you have a very specialized program. Everybody has their own program. Tell me when you decided that was gonna be the best idea to build a team from, the base from each swimmer or each group of swimmer having their own specialized training program.
So yeah, this one thing I've worked on, for quite a long time really. I think that every athlete is different, and being a European-based coach, that when you've got talent, you need to nurture that talent. Just because an athlete thinks differently to what you do, but if they're good, you need to find a way to work with them. In the US, they've got the big college systems. They have each college has 60, 70, 80 athletes. They all go in the pool. It's very difficult for the coaches to individualize programs, but generally they get a very, very good number of very good athletes because they survive the system and they can come through, and they've got huge numbers. But in Europe, we have to very much specialize. If you find a good athlete, you need to develop a program around them. And I believe that we're all different. So I said, I grew up in East London. I'm a British guy, got different parents. I coach Sergei Shevtsov, who's from Zaporozhye in Ukraine. Very, very different culture, very different way of looking at the world. Grew up in a different environment, essentially a survivor of the system that's come through and has never really been given a big helping hand along the way. Chad Leclos from the South African system. So everyone's got their own way of looking at the world. Everyone's got their own ideas on why they're good. So, but I believe that, you have to individualize, talk to people differently, bring in parts of programs that they believe are important for them, even if it doesn't make any sense. If an athlete thinks that I have to swim 15 800s and it's going to make me an Olympic champion and they're a sprinter, you meet halfway, I think it's all to do with communication, understand that we're all different. We've all got different thoughts on life and how we should do things, but there's no right or wrong answer. And that's how I do my coaching. I even work with Saskia at the 2012 Olympics, and it's all about effective communication, making sure you're talking, being open. And that's what I do myself. I'm always open to my athletes and their ideas, and because they are important. They're good because the swimmers are good because they're good. And as a coach, it's our job to assist them on their journey, not to actually believe it's us that's made them special.
Yeah. And which has been your biggest challenge faced when an athlete comes to you? For example, I believe Ian Finnerty from Indiana went to Gloria Sports Arena a few months ago. Which has been the biggest background that impacted you the most from a specific swimmer?
Look, as a coach, you get athletes that I'm not talking about Ian. Like Ian, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, it's difficult for anyone to travel, so he has to go back to the USA and get a program that it's stable for him to qualify for whatever happens this summer, or prepare for ISL season 3, which may happen in the summer instead. So you have to. What I honestly believe as a coach, you're not going to be able to work well with everyone. I think it's about fit. Like, I'm an artistic based coach. I'm not a scientist. So what I'll have around me is staff like Tom Rushton, who is exceptionally numbers driven and science based, and so he can fit with athletes that need that data. Like, some athletes need data, times, numbers. They want to see how much yardage they've done, how much percentage training of threshold they've done, but they need that to swim well. Whereas others just don't want to know. They just want to come to the pool. How's my technique looking? So you need to be able to work with different people, but also understand that you might not be able to work with these people. So someone like, I don't know, Craig Ozerk loves numbers and data. So me and him see the world differently. And he looks at me sometimes and thinks, James, you're absolutely crazy. You're making this up as you go along. And, but he can relate to Tom, and him and Tom have a fabulous relationship. So Tom leads on the program with Craig because it's all about numbers and data, and they can see where they're going and they understand it that way. But so for my thing, it's about fit. You've got to get the right fit and understand as a coach, you can make swimmers worse. It's not a guarantee you're going to make a great athlete better. I think you look at the example, Bob Bowman, Yannick Agnel. Bob Bowman, incredible coach, most successful coach ever with Michael Phelps. Yannick Agnel, one of the greatest 200 swimmers, freestyle swimmers ever, London Olympics. But yet they couldn't gel. So, it's a coaching profession is hard. But my personal thing is just about fit and also understand that it's not going to work for everyone.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Olympics coaching Saskia for the 2012 Olympic Games. And talking about that topic specifically, I mean, the Great Britain for you, James, Saskia for you, the Netherlands, and Dylan for you, Canada, are nations that already pre-selected, made a selection from a certain swimmer that could participate in these upcoming Olympic Games. My first question will be, do you think it's a good idea to select the Olympic team so prior to the beginning of the Games, if they happen, of course? And the other question will be, how confident are you that the Games can happen after all the news that went viral these past days? I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Saskia, Dylan, or James, please.
Who's starting? Is it me?
All right. I mean, I won't touch on whether the Olympics are going to go or not, because believe it or not, but the IOC doesn't call me to ask my opinion on these sorts of things. So, I mean, I have no idea other than as well as anybody else does. Hopefully they do. But, we live in a world these days where things change very quickly. So, I think as a swimmer, or for all the swimmers and coaches out there, like, all you can do is prepare. Like, it's going to be something ultimately that you have no control over whether it happens or not. So, it's try not to think too much about that. But in terms of trials, like, that's always the balancing act of, are you better served having trials early, selecting your team, and then giving them a bunch of time to prepare, with the downside being, somebody that's a late bloomer riding the extreme end of a taper might not make that team because they haven't developed enough by the time that you had trials. And some of those swimmers that were great, 6 months before the Olympics when you had trials, now don't perform at the level that you wanted them to. Alternatively, if you go the US model where they have trials like 6 weeks before 4 weeks before the Olympics, you run the risk of guys that just tapered to the extreme and don't really have a ton left in the tank by the time the Olympics roll around. So there's pros and cons to each. I think a lot of people kind of look to the US because it's the real powerhouse on, why don't teams have, or people have trials closer to the Olympics. But the reality is, for a lot of smaller countries, you have to preserve that your stars are going to make it. Like, Canada is kind of in the in-between, where we have a trial similar to the US, but we don't have anywhere near the depth. So you always kind of run the risk of, what happens if Kylie Moss DQs at trials? Like, do you not take her, and she's one of your best swimmers? So there's a little bit of kind of a gray area in between. I think this year specifically, Canada, they just announced on Friday that they're sort of hedging their bets with pre-selecting some of the swimmers. I don't think there's anyone too controversial in the 6 there that there's any doubt that they were going to make it. And still they'll have kind of 2 trials opportunities. So in that way, they're kind of helping protect against the sort of X factor risks of, someone has to quarantine for 2 weeks right before trials, or, what have you, that they can get the best team possible. Because that's what people kind of forget, is that the goal of any of these federations is to send the best. How do I send the best team possible to the Olympics? So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer necessarily, because it depends a lot on your country and the sort of shape of the depth that you have.
Yeah. That's actually a great point that you made there. But for example, you mentioned that the US system and how they do trials is like the most common one in the world, and it can work for some people, it cannot for other. But the other powerhouse on the swimming world will be Australia, who had early trials and now they switch it. So do you think that was a good move or not?
I mean, that'll be the $1 million question. It'll be obvious in hindsight after the Olympic. Like if Australia performs amazing, that'll be why. And if they don't perform, everyone will be on them on that's why that it didn't happen. In reality, it's I think probably unfair to assign blame or praise either to like 100% either to that decision. Like it's a tough decision, especially it's a tough decision in a regular year. And I think like in a year like this, where you have COVID, you don't know, are things going to be worse or better in a few months? Like it's a hard thing to judge, and nobody has that answer. Yeah. So they're trying to make the best solution with kind of the evidence that they have in front of them. So we'll see, I guess.
Definitely. And your final thoughts on that topic, James and Saskia, just to close this topic.
So I just unmute myself. No, I think it's someone's just got to make a decision on what's happening at some point. But I have a bit of a philosophy around you go on the information that what you've got. The information that we've got at the minute is that there's going to be a competition in the summer. Until we hear otherwise, our plans stay exactly the same, or until we have different plans, until ISL season 3 is finalised. The dates on that, so we've always got an objective, and I echo Dylan's sentiments. Whatever happens is you got to keep prepared. Just don't drop off, because there will be something to prepare for. At the minute, there is a meet in Tokyo. Whether it stays there or not, who knows? But we just have to carry on as if it is there, and until it's officially cancelled or we hear anything otherwise, it's going ahead.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Saskia, what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, because you don't know how it's grow, or everybody has his own rules. So I think I hope the Olympics going to start in August, July. So we will see, and I hope it's going to start.
Thank you, Saskia. And with this, let's move to our next event, the female 100 individual medley. And James, straight from the get-go, Sarah Sjöström and Anastasia Skrudaj for you in this event. 58.75 from Sarah and 58.43 from Anastasia. Two pretty good results. But at the same time, James, I have a big question on why Sarah in this race. It seems like you can play around quite as much. Just mention Marie-Sophie Harvey that you put on 2 IM is also great in the 100 IM. And yet Sarah is such a diverse swimmer, and she's so good on so many events that it seems like you could have used her elsewhere. And specifically what I'm thinking about is the 200 freestyle. Did you guys ever thought about making the switch from 100 IM to 2 free? And were you satisfied with these results, 58.75, 58.43?
That was actually an event we played around a bit. We put Mary in the 2 free afterwards, and Sarah, she actually had the fast apart from Anastasia in the final. Sarah at that point was our fastest 100 medley girl, and in the first meet she was 57, and it was after the back injury. She had a bit of a back niggle after the first meet. She never really recovered the medley form. So medley form was a breaststroke, just wasn't quite there, or the backstroke for Sarah. So we wanted to play around a little bit with the team. I know we were happy to get second and third, obviously, but Sarah was a little bit off. She was actually quite a way off of where she was earlier on. But that wasn't indicative of her form. It was just the fact that the stroke wasn't quite as connected since the back niggle. And Anastasia, she was getting better and better, and she almost nicked that race in the final. So we were quite happy with her progression there as well.
All right, thank you, James. Saskia, what about you? I mean, Katinka Hosso and Jenna Laukkanen, 59.83, 59.36. this was probably pretty far from what you envisioned for this race. And were you frustrated at all? And why do you think the girls swam not as fast as they potentially could have?
I think after the 200 fly, it must be a heavy race for
For Katinka?
Katinka.
Mhm.
And I think also Jenna and Ida, the breaststroke swimmer girls, I think they are, how do you say, it was maybe a little bit too much. And that's what I start also this podcast to say, to put somebody else in the breaststroke.
Mhm.
Because Jenna and also Ida are it was too much and heavy, and that's also in the time from Jenna with a 59. Match before was 58, it was much better. So yeah, I think this was I don't know what to say.
No, I understand. I understand. It was built up fatigue on them a little bit. And yeah,
Yeah.
you mentioned Ida and Jenna, and they were also swimming the skins earlier breaststroke. There was quite a lot for them. I agree. Thank you, Saskia.
Yeah.
Dylan, what about for you? I mean, Kelsey Wogan, Louis Hansen, especially Louis Hansen. It seems like just theoretically, it seems like she should be somewhere on par with Anastasia Shkurdai when it comes to the 100 meters individual medley. Do you feel like something went wrong for Louis here, or were you satisfied with a 59:15?
Louise was consistent throughout the whole season. Like she was kind of bang on. You know, she was someone that I think we gave a sprint program to, but I think her body type and sort of background is a little bit more historically on the mid distance side. So that balance, I think, sort of gave her the longevity where she essentially maintained or got faster as we went through the season. So this was kind of on par where she'd been. I think, you know, in specific to the 100 IM, I think, you know, she's someone that coming right out of NCAA and switching programs to Loughborough and, you know, coming off of yard, she hadn't swum short course meters in, you know, 4 or 5 years, to an event that's not really swum much in general, especially not in NCAA. So it took, I think she hasn't quite sort of gotten the full kind of snappy sprinting and quick in and out of the turns that you kind of need to succeed in an event like 100 IM. So I think that's an event definitely going forwards that I think we could see an improvement. But it sort of looking at it in season, she was right on where kind of she was. You know, you're not going to make those changes in the span of a couple of weeks, right? So yeah, it was kind of what was to be expected. Kelsey, you know, I mean, she was definitely feeling the fatigue. I would put her up there on people that were most needing a rest. You know, she managed to get the job done in the 200 the day before, and then it was kind of just whatever we could do to get her through the rest of the match from there. So she was due for a rest, and she, to her credit, she bounced back great for the semis. But yeah, day two was there were a few people in the same boat that were really starting to feel the fatigue here.
And Dylan, just looking at the next event, it's going to be the women's 50 fly, and you have Louis Hansen in this event also. She swam at 25:73, which is great, but isn't that a little bit tough of a double 100 IM into a 50 fly? I know you mentioned Louis is a little bit more on the mid distance side, but she has been acting a bit like a sprinter in this ISL bubble, and for a sprinter, that's a very tough double. Did you ever consider maybe making Kylie Massa swim the 100 IM?
Yeah, we'd looked at, like, 100 IM is an interesting event because there's a lot of people that can kind of slot into it just because it's not an event that I think gets a ton of focus from a lot of athletes, not being an Olympic event, and you know, a lot of short course meets also not including it. So it's it was certainly fun to watch. I liked having it in the ISL, but yeah, so you had a lot of options in 100 IM. We got Kylie into the 50 fly as sort of a filler at an event. Louise, like that, to your point, that is a tough double, but she's someone that's built to be able to go all out several times. Like she has that, even just looking at kind of the differences of the two Swedish girls we have in the team, like Michelle and Michelle Coleman and Louise Hansen. Michelle's geared as a purebred sprinter, whereas Louise has the ability to, doesn't have that quite as fine-tuned sprint skills, but can slot into a lot more events. So she was super useful for the ISL. I think looking at the competition for this event, any event that you've got Renomi and Melanie and Sarah, like if she hadn't swum the 100 IM before, I don't know that it would have made a ton of difference point wise. And, so that was kind of our rationale behind it.
Yeah. And talking about that double, James, I mean, Sarah also did the 100 IM afterwards, coming into the next event that I wanted to discuss, which is the women's 50 fly. She swims the 50 fly afterwards, the 100 IM. She gets third. Mari Banic, one of the best additions of any team in the ISL, got fourth. So tell me, because you have in Mari and in Sarah two very different swimmers. Sarah, in my opinion, in the ISL is the fastest on top of the water, and Madeline underwater. So what did you think Melanie and Ranomi did get good because they were ahead of both of your two swimmers? And also, what did Sarah and Mari lack in this race, or what do you think happened here?
Well, Sarah and Ranomi very similar PBs and the 50 fly, and then Melanie's exceptional underwater skills, and she's just behind those girls, and she may even be there now. I'm not sure what her best time, but she's exceptional 50 fly as well. And Maddie's just a little bit behind. So, we always knew that the two Iron ladies were on good form. They're on good form, swimming well. They swam fast in the previous matches. On the 50 fly, yeah, Sarah would have liked to have won, but again, that's racing. And I think Maddie, she wasn't actually far in that race. There, she wasn't far off the American record, which she went on to break later on. And you're right, she was a fantastic addition to our team. And it's interesting when I contacted her, she was looking for a team, like no one wanted her. So I snapped her up in no time at all. And she had a real breakthrough year, and she's got an incredible underwater kick. Short course, long course, different styles of swimming, different ways, and she's incredibly adapted to the short course program.
Definitely. And Saskia, on the other hand, your swimmers here, Ranomi and Melanie, got the overall victory here. I mean, 1 and 2 in a 50 butterfly and getting 26 points is a huge result, especially if that's against Energy Standard in Toronto and Tokyo Frog Kings. So how did the team react to this outcome of the race?
The whole box was yelling. So we are happy to that they are 1 and 2, and also with these times. And this time was Melanie faster than Ranomi. And also for Melanie was at a good moment with the focus on the semi-finals that she can do to win. And it's also good to have a competition in a team. So that's, we are happy with the whole team, and also these two swimmers. Yeah, they like it.
Thank you, Saskia. And James, a little bit earlier, you mentioned Yevgeny's technique, or Yevgeny Rilov's, being a little bit too pretty sometimes. We're here at the 50 fly, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Tokyo Frog Kings athletes, Simona Kubila, and specifically Suzuka Hashigawa. I believe it's a flow that exists within a lot of Japanese sprinters, that it seems like they're a little bit too technical sometimes. Would you agree to the statement? And it breaks my heart also as a swimmer, knowing how much importance technique holds in our sport. But it seems like sometimes they just try a little bit too hard to be absolutely perfect, especially in these sprint events. Would you agree to that?
No, it was Misha Romanchuk. I said sometimes too.
Sorry,
Beautiful.
Misha, you're absolutely right. It was not.
He was, yeah, he is. He's very gentle with the water. I think there's one thing I really admire about the Japanese culture is just their persistence with perfect technique, and you don't generally see a Japanese swimmer that's not very, very efficient in the water. And I actually, I'd love that's part of my mentality on swimming. My philosophy on coaching is, it's got to be great technique. So I'm not against any of these guys, swimming, but there comes a point where it's a fine balance. I think, you've got to be able to apply power on the water that comes from the dry land, and how much, the tempo and aggressiveness of the stroke. Like, I tend to think that all the sprinters in the freestyle events, they need to be competitive. You have to have a frequency of around 60 because you just need to be applying power on the water that much. And again, like, I don't know the athlete, I don't know how the coach works with us, so I can't really comment on their strategy. But whatever they do, that's what they think is the best way forward for them.
Thank you, James. And I think you have an excellent point regarding dryland and weightlifting, because we had a chat with Togo, the team manager of Tokyo Frog Kings, the other day with Bruno. And what he said was absolutely shocking for me, but a huge number of the Japanese swimmers are yet to do any weightlifting.
Yeah, they don't lift.
It's mind-boggling to me. And someone like Ryosuke Iri hasn't lifted any weights for over a decade. Absolutely insane for me.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to what works for them. That's why there's so much emphasis on the technical side, because some of the athletes are a little bit down on the power, where, say, Brazilians and Europeans tend to be very much power-based athletes, and but it's a cultural thing. Again, it's what works for them, and that's the decision they've taken and the route they've gone down. That's what makes swimming so beautiful. It's a totally different philosophy of working to get the sort of similar results.
Thank you, James. And with this, let's skip into the next event, and it is the male 50 meters butterfly. And straight from the get-go, Dylan, I have a question to you. You had Cole Pratt and Finley Knox represent you in this event, and 24:05 from Cole and 23:49 from Finley. You ended up receiving a -1 point after this event. And where was Ryan Shane in this event? Why didn't we see him?
Like, we wanted to rest Shane a little bit, to be truth be told. 50 fly is something that Shane can do a pretty solid 50 fly, but it's not certainly not his best event, and certainly in an event where you have Nick Santos to throw Shane in, and even if we were a second faster, than Finley, which Finley actually wasn't too far off the Canadian record in 50 fly there, so still a solid swim for Finley, but it wouldn't have made a difference, to be quite honest, with the jackpot rule. If we were a second faster, still would have been 0 points. So do you use Shane's energy up there for a 0 point difference? That was sort of our thinking. Cole wanted to swim it. He's another guy that's very useful in a lot of events, so it was good to get him a sprinting opportunity. Certainly not a superstar 50 flyer, and that's not why we had him typically on the roster, but it was good to get him a kind of a different racing experience in there.
Okay,
yeah,
and what about Andrei Govorov? It's like the
again,
event he has in him, really.
Yeah, no, for
it was
sure.
surprising
But
to see him race.
he's someone that needs some rest too, right? He's not someone that's built for multiple all-out efforts. That's not how he trains and how he focuses. So we kind of tried to play to his strengths. Needed him in the semifinals to be sharp. So we had two young guys that have a fair bit of speed. And again, if even at whatever 22.8, 22.7, which is kind of consistent where Govorov had been for much of the season, still getting jackpotted. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of strategy for a 0 point swing. So
Thank you, Nolan.
And talking about speed, James, I mean, here you use Chad Leclerc in the 50 fly and Andre Shilkin giving him a new opportunity. But I wanted to ask you a specific thing about Chad, because I know that in this match he was a little bit tired swimming a lot of events, but in the final or during the past, I don't know, 3, 4 years, where he's at the top of his game, it seems that Chad has been very good and close to his personal best in the two fly. Actually, in 2018, he broke the world record, but Diaceto also broke it, so he only got the African record. But here, for example, last season in ISL, he still got very close to that PB in the 200 fly, also in the 100 fly swimming bunch of 48. But I think that the 50 fly is an event where Chad has not been very close to that 21.95 that he swam at 2014 in Doha. Why do you think is that? Why are not we seeing that Chad Leclerc with that amazing speed that we used to see, especially in short course?
Absolutely no idea.
Okay.
I could sit here and try and give you some answer on this and that technical thing, but I don't know. It has been a little bit off. His 200 fly is as good as he's ever been.
Yep.
In ISL, like he's as good as ever been. His 100 fly is just off his best ever. So to have the speed, not quite there. I'm not too sure, to be honest. And that's an honest coaching answer. It's with Chad, you can give him more and more speed work. It doesn't seem to work for him. Chad's actually an athlete. At the minute he's doing a lot of work at the minute. He's actually training kind of for 400 freestyle at the minute. So each athlete is different. It's gone off the board a little bit, but it will come back. Sometimes swimming is like that. Athletes change year after year. They're not the same athlete as they were the previous 12 months. Their bodies change. Their bodies get 1 year older. Maybe they get a bit stronger, a bit heavier. Like I know Chad from 2016 had more of a dryland focus, and I've taken that away now completely. So he was quite heavy. Maybe that just didn't work for him as well. But that's swimming. I said it a lot of times. I could give you a lovely fluffy answer, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. But talking about the dryland and the bodies of the swimmers that you made, they change over the years, over time. I mean, have you ever talked to Chad about increasing his muscle mass to maybe become a stronger guy and implement that in his races, especially in the long course meters event, where, in my opinion, 5 years ago he was very dominant, but since 2015, 2016, those Olympics, he has been lacking those final meters.
I think you have to be very careful with an athlete like Chad and dryland. Like, understand what makes them special. Like, say some of the Tokyo swimmers, I give you the example, the Japanese swimmers who said they haven't done any dryland. I guarantee if you give them some dryland, they'll all go slower because they don't understand, the system is not in their culture. They go from being very technically efficient, they'll all be underwater. So say the same with Chad. Chad doesn't have a huge dryland experience and backup. So Ben Proud, Flora Manadou have been doing weights their whole life. And, it's not to say we haven't experimented with dryland. I know he has done he had a big dryland program post 2016. And, a guy like Chad, if he's heavy in the water and he sits a little bit lower, it doesn't work for him. So you have to work with the individual. Also, sometimes the science doesn't make sense. So the dryland coaches, I've worked with dryland coaches before. Oh, the numbers are good. They're stronger than ever. I was like, yeah, but they're 4 or 5 kilos heavier now. They're underwater. It's something to play with. And of an athlete like Chad, who is an exceptional swimmer, you have to be very careful. It's not a case of, now here's a dryland program, go and you're going to get better. No, it doesn't work like that. It's implementing small changes, tiny little developments. and he's doing more than what he did at the minute. He's doing more than what he did pre 2016 Rio, but he said not as much as what he did after Rio. But
Okay.
it's difficult. We can make assumptions on athletes, but it's very different when you're working with them in the flesh.
Thank you, James. Yeah, definitely.
And interesting to mention, you mentioned that the Japanese swimmers probably, if they introduced weights in dryland right now, that go slower. Well, Togo revealed that the Japanese team decided to hit dryland more heavily and sort of focus on it coming to the Olympic Games in Tokyo if they're going to happen. And specifically, people like Ryasuke Iri, Takeshi Kawamoto are going to hit the dryland either for the first time in their life or for the first time in a decade. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
But
And talking about those interesting things, I mean, you have to finish the 50 flight to go to the next event. I mean, Saskia, I don't want to put words in your mouth to describe the performance on Nicola Santos. So just tell me how was for Team Iron this race.
Saskia, oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry. No, this is every time a distance that we can put the points. So take the points, and yeah, it's amazing to see the 50 meters from Team Iron.
Yeah,
And this match also Niklas was focused on his world record, and he was a little bit sad after this race. He was so close with his world record. So yeah, but with the points, we are always the whole team so happy.
Mhm. Yeah, now thinking about it, Saskia, you're right. Team Iron might be the team most focused on the 50s. On the men's side, you have Emir Sakshi on the 50 breast. You have Nicolas Santos on the 50 fly. On the male freestyle, you have Maxim Lobanovsky, Robert Glinta.
Robert Glinta, yeah.
On the women's side, Ranomi Kamuyoyo, Melanie Heineke, Ida Halka, Jenna Laukkanen. Oh, wow. You're actually heavily focused on the 50. Thank you, Saskia. And going into the next event, and it is the women's 50 freestyle skins. We're finally into the skins. And to sort of start things off, James, how did you come to the decision of choosing freestyle? And was it always freestyle, or were you debating between maybe having a revenge opportunity for Sarah and the butterfly?
No, it was an easy one for us, just because we even though we made the decision on the previous night after the women's relay, we went 1-2. Also, we went 1-2 in that medley relay. It was awesome. We already chose freestyle because we wanted to avoid we knew Ranomi and Melanie were on form in the fly. We didn't want to take too many risks. We knew Fem and Sarah would definitely be in the top 3 of the skins. And it also, Fem almost knocked Ranomi out in the second round and come very close to having 1-2 in that event. So no, it was a pretty straightforward decision from me.
Okay. Michelle Coleman also almost knocked out Sarah Sjöström in the first round. That might have been a little scary for you.
Yes, that's always, the skins it's so hard to judge, especially in a competitive skins. Like some of the skins are just not competitive. There's going to be one swimmer clear up. But this one was going to come down. Like it was clear from the start. Ranomi and Sarah again were going to be head to head in the final, and it becomes very tactical. Like Sarah saved a lot of energy on that first one. Yes, she almost got knocked. Michelle was close, but she also had a huge amount of energy reserves. That's a massive advantage over Ranomi in the last one. Ranomi and Melanie really pushed the first round. Mel got jackpotted in the second round because she was so hard in the first, but that was Iron's tactics. They wanted to try and jackpot the first round to get some more points. So we could see what was going on. We knew their strategy. We knew what was happening. But no, I was quite happy with how it all sort of played out, really.
Thank you, James. And it almost seemed like it was the reverse situation of last match on the male 50 breaststroke skins, when, but it didn't quite pay off for Ranomi this time. But last match, what happened was your guy, Ilya Shimanovic, decided to go all out in the first 50,
Yep.
and Emre didn't. Emre decided to save up some energy. And Emre ended up winning the following 2 rounds, the second and the third round. But when you have a look at the overall points, the jackpot from Ilya Shimanovic in this first 50 resulted in him earning more points overall than Emre did. And Saskia, maybe I'm thinking this, analyzing this too much, but maybe Ranomi tried to play the strategy a little bit, try to jackpot everyone in this first 50 and then see how the remaining 2 go.
Yes. Yes, our focus was more on the jackpot. Every skins race, also with the butterfly with Emre and Niklas Santos, that was also focused on the points. And yes, that's also then you put a lot of energy in your race, so then you must be give something up in the last race. So with Ranomi and Sarah, yeah, then you saw after the start it was close, and then the turn Sarah put some butterfly kicks in, and she was on the front, and yeah, she won.
Makes sense. Thank you, Saskia. And James, Saskia, another question to both of you, kind of. Last match, Sarah did something very interesting in the skins. She decided to warm down doing butterfly between rounds 2 and 3. James, was this an element of, because, hey, as a spectator, I feel like swimming misses a little bit of rivalries, a little bit of trash talk, maybe a little bit of controversy. Was this at all a little bit of mocking and a little bit of, as to say, trash talk from Sarah, warming down on the butterfly in last round? And did this spark up the rivalry between Ranomi and Sarah?
Swimmers are generally very polite, aren't they, to each other? It's like,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm in your way, I'm doing this. And actually the skins is actually something where you can see a little bit of tension between the athletes, and the coaches are out there on the pool side. So it's fantastic for the show. But no, it was, there was no, it was no gamesmanship really in Sarah doing the fly. She was just doing it to get the blood in her arms. Like, she likes to feel a little bit of the pain that's in there, or it gives a little bit more sensation. But like I saw her doing it, and I think in yourself, she was obviously very strong anyway. But there was no intentional gamesmanship. But you're right, in swimming we don't have this. Well, we'll get there. I'm sure we'll get there. There has been a lot. ISL season 2 has definitely given a lot more trash talk in swimming than I've ever seen in any sort of in my history of swimming. But it's something that we'll get used to over time. I'm sure the coaches and the managers will start saying little things, press or interpret it in different ways. But I think it's healthy. Rivalry is always healthy for sport.
Yeah.
In any sort of major leagues, there is that rivalry. There is tension because it's important. If it wasn't important, then no one would care.
And actually, James, that's a great point, because that trash talk, I believe that's what swimming needs if it wants to become a successful and popular sport in the world, right? People, fans watch UFC fights, for example, yesterday, or another sports because of those rivalries, where people are actually showing to the audience that they want to win. They will do whatever it takes to overcome their opponent. So I believe it's a good way on the right. It's a right step on the right.
It also
direction.
raises the stakes a little bit. Like, if you talk trash to somebody, then you're kind of expected to live up to your words. And people, I believe, watch to see if this person is going to utterly fail or prove his words. There's also this element to it.
And it doesn't have to be personal. What happens on the field, what happens on the swimming pool, on the deck, stays there, and afterwards everybody is happy, everybody's a friend. Yeah, that's how sports works. If not,
Yeah, I agree and I disagree a little bit. It has to be authentic. You know, it has to be authentic and it has to feel real. Otherwise, it's just fake and false. Like sometimes UFC is clear, just it's rubbish. But we do need an element of reality. Now, let's just call it reality. Coleman Stewart and Ryan Murphy was reality, and that's good and that's healthy. I'm not a big fan of trash talk because you're actually trying to belittle your opposition, and I've never liked that. That's not my style of leadership or management. I think I think being healthy and competitive is good, and talking reality of situations. And also, like I said, being authentic. If it's authentic and it's talking up rivalry, it's good. And that's like, we have a rivalry of London Raw. We have a rivalry now with the Toronto Titans. And I'm sure that each coach they do speak quite honestly behind the scenes, and we want to put one over this team and everything. But I think we need a sense of reality in it.
Well, let's hope for some trash talk between James Gibson and Mel Marshall. That would be a spectacle to see. Thank you, James. But Dylan, for you, I mean, Anika Postolon and Michelle Coleman, 24-66 from Anika and 24-27 from Michelle. Were you satisfied with these results? Did you expect more from Michelle potentially?
Yeah, I think Michelle's one of those ones where she's a purebred sprinter. I know 2016 maybe was a different case when she finaled that in the 200 freestyle long course at the Olympics. But since then, she's really kind of focused her efforts on the sprints and become a bit more of a purebred sprinter. I think, with the year that she had with training and stuff, she didn't kind of have the aerobic base that maybe some of the other swimmers did, or maybe that she did earlier in her career. So for her, I think the recovery became a lot more important. And with that many meets, that many races back to back, definitely trying to sort of preserve her energy stores became a priority. I think the race strategy with her for skins boiled down to go lights out the first round, and maybe you can outtouch Sarah. I don't know that it was Sarah specifically that we were thinking of, but maybe you can squeak into the second round, and we can address what happens from there. Right? So she was close. She almost made it. I mean, it was certainly not the fastest that we saw her throughout the season, but given the kind of wear and tear of the sprinting on her throughout those back-to-back meets, I think it was, kind of within the realm of where we thought she would be. And you can't really fault her. She gave it everything she had. It was a tough race, tough competition there. And then Annika, she was a relay only swimmer for most of it. Getting her in at a meet to do some individual events, I think, was great for her racing resume, and getting her into a skins event was definitely a bonus for her as well. But again, like, the expectation wasn't that she was gonna squeak into the top two or something. So it was a solid swim. I think both of them would have been happier if they could have gone faster. But when you take into all the factors into account of the amount of racing in such a short amount of time, I think it was sort of right around where they should have been.
Thank you, Dylan. And sort of looking at the next event and the final event we'll discuss today, the male 50 meters butterfly skins. You had Ryan Shane and Sergey Fesikov represent your team, and unfortunately, both of them failed to make it to the second round. But 22-8 from Ryan Shane and 23-22 from Sergey Fesikov. I believe, you should be quite satisfied with these results, especially you decided to not race Andrei Goborov in this, who probably would have succeeded in making it to the second round and then earned 0 points in second round. But how happy were you regarding this?
Yeah, I think we were pretty happy with it. Shane, back to talking about the 50 fly before, this is why we rested him from the 50 fly, so we could focus him on skins.
Mm-hmm.
Backstroke, obviously his priority and his main focus, but the guy has unbelievable starts, both backstroke and off the blocks. He's got amazing underwaters. Unfortunately, here he didn't have such a great turn, which hurts you in a 50 fly quite a bit. But still a good effort. Still cracked 23. So I think we were pretty happy with it. Sergey, again, like the guys did a ton of racing in a short amount of time. He's one of our older athletes, so definitely fatigue becomes an issue there. But like it was a tough field, and they both gave it what they had. We talked about it before, but fly is definitely an area we were looking to improve on the men's side. But our guys did what they could, and sometimes I think to be happy with.
Thank you, Dylan. And sort of looking into the next season, and I don't want you to reveal too much to me. And if that's too much, you can just let us know. But do you by any chance plan on recruiting the second half of the Fesikov family, Anastasia Fesikova, into the team?
We had her on the team this year, but she had a shoulder injury. That's actually worked out okay in the end. We were going to juggle between Lisa Bratton and then Anastasia and then Kylie in the 3 backstrokes. Michelle was able to kind of cover us off in some of the sprints. We're fortunate enough that backstroke was a pretty deep part of our roster. But yeah, she was signed on the team, but unfortunately had a shoulder injury at a camp a few weeks out of the season. But yeah, it would have been cool to have a husband-wife duo at ISL.
Yeah, and
And
probably
Dylan,
that have their
before-
kids also. It would have been good for the show for sure.
For sure.
Go ahead, Bruno.
Yeah, thank you, Evan. And before this podcast ends, I wanted to ask you the question. Being a general manager, especially during the pandemic, building a team a rookie team that had no experience in the ISL, looking for those swimmers, what did you think was the biggest challenge, and what was the experience of calling the swimmers, getting involved in building the team that you enjoyed the most?
Yeah, I think it was starting with nothing really. You're selling smoke in a sense at the start, where all the other teams could kind of point and say, look, this was our team last year. Look how good of a time people had. Look how fast people swam. We were this good, etc. Whereas we're essentially saying, we've never existed. We've never had anybody on the team. You don't know who we are. Do you want to be on our team? And that can be, can present its challenges. But I think, to give myself, Rob and Byron credit, we were pretty scrappy with recruiting. We were after it early. And it's a momentum thing. Like once we got the ball rolling with a couple early signings, we obviously had an in with the Canadians, which gave us a good core. But I think really when the momentum started picking up was when we signed Michael Chadwick and Blake Peroni in pretty quick succession. We had a ton of swimmers after that reaching out to us, whereas previously we had been reaching out to all of them. So yeah, I really enjoyed that part of kind of getting creative with contacting people. How do you, as someone sitting in Toronto, Canada, how do you get in touch with a swimmer in Sweden or in Hungary or wherever? It takes some creativity. Sometimes you're asking coaches or swimmers, their friends or contacts and stuff like that. So you got to be a little bit creative, but I think we did the best with what we could.
Definitely a great job. You got into that semi-final, so that goal that you had in mind, I mean, that's a good check on that. So congratulations.
And Saskia, a question to you. I mean, 22:44 to start things off for Nicolas Santos. And actually, Emre Sakci made it to the second round also with a 22:66. I believe this was a huge success for Team Iron, especially regarding Emre Sakci. I mean, I remember me and Bruno watching this race and the lineup for this race, and we were so excited to see Emre Sakci race the butterfly. But my question to you regarding Nicolas Santos is, did he try to take the first 50 relatively easy? Because it seems like he has the speed advantage that would allow him to sort of start the first 50 as if he would start 100 and still make it to the second round and maybe try to make it to the third round?
Yeah, he was also focused to swim the second round, and after this first round, he must be swimming fast, slow down to focus for the next round. But after the second start, he was gone. He was lose his speed, and you saw the difference with the 50 fly before in the video, because we we um, we were thinking before that he was swimming also at 21, but yeah, he started with a 22:44. It was okay for the first round, and then my mindset was, I was thinking, okay, at 22:44, then he's going faster in the second round. But that was a 23:23. That it was it doesn't matter. It was okay for these guys to swim 2 times 50 fast.
Yeah, thank you, Saskia. And what about Emre? I mean, Emre missed both turns in these skins. I mean, don't get me wrong, and he still managed to make it to the second round. And this was a huge surprise to me. Was it a surprise to Team Iron also?
Yeah, before it was a joke too. He said, I can swim the 50 fly skins. So everybody was thinking and look around. So, do you mean? So we were thinking, and after I think a half hour or 1 hour, they make a choice to put him in the 50 fly skins, and it was fun. Whole Team Iron. We are in the box, standing, yelling, and it was a team. So it was good to see him also swim the 50 fly.
Thank you, Saskia. And James, for you, I mean, these skins were quite significant. I mean, Chad, 22:54, 23:09, and finally 23:43. This was a hard battle for Chad against Takeshi Kawamoto. Let me tell you this, and I wonder if you agree to this. And I would like to hear a little bit about the strategy for Chad, if you had any for this race.
Okay, no, yeah, Chad, he just scraped through the second round. Nick, 23:09. Nick was 23:2. So we just got through into the final. So he won. He made the third round by a tenth. The logic with the skins was we just hadn't done fly. That was the only reason why we chose fly. It wasn't anything strategic against anyone else. It was we hadn't swum fly skins, and we wanted to give Chad a run out in the just to test how we were for the final. And everyone come to me like, "Oh, why have you chose that again, Nick?" He's like 21:7. We're like, "Well, Nick's got to do it 3 times, and we're pretty confident that he's gonna fall off." But he almost made it to the final. I would have liked to see Nick Santos in the final just to watch him do a third 50 fly. I'm sure Saskia would have liked that as well. But no, the whole thing with the skins with Chad was great. Chad loves playing up the entertainment thing. I think that was one of our good experiences in the boxes, and I think we were next to Iron again. We seem to be next to you guys quite a lot. They had a real nice little vibe and atmosphere going. So did we. So there was no real strategy on it. It was kind of get through the first round as easy as possible. Chad, he had to go all out in the second round. He had to go all out in the second just to make it through, and he did by the skin of his teeth. And he ended up winning. But I would never, when Chad has a close race, I'll never bet against him. He's got this competitive spirit that I've never seen from another swimmer. Like he just gets his head down and goes. I think. If I look at one of his greatest races, 2017 World Championships, he was dying. He was dying.
Two fly? Yeah.
With 2 fly. He was dying with 65 meters to go. But he died better than anyone else I've seen. And everyone was dying in that race. And
Laszlo was coming for him.
Laszlo was dying as well, but everyone was dying, but he dies better. He's got this technique that he does. And, he just loves racing. He's like going toe to toe with the devil. and he'll get under. He's one of these swimmers that will get under your skin as well, because he talks underwater and stuff like that.
Did you think that this was the specific moment during the entire season that, I mean, changed Chad? Because afterwards, I mean, look at his 2 fly performances, 100 fly, skins races, relays. Did you think this was the specific moment that made Chad realize, okay, it doesn't matter, I got surgery this year, I can still beat everyone else here?
Well, it was just, Chad was just tired. He was like most people. They were, Dylan touched on that they'd done 3 meets, same as us, back to back. It was just, Chad was hanging out for a rest, even though the semi-finals was like another 3 days later. And Chad dropped a lot at the end, just in the final, because there was his first rest. Like most people, they actually had a bit of rest. And that's what made the ISL so good. It was because it was so compact. Eventually, when the schedule was confirmed, and obviously it was a lot of moving parts because of COVID, and it had to be like that. But because the schedule was compact, every manager and coach had to manipulate their team. They had to play with strategy. You could not. I know Dressel did a lot of races and he did what he did, but not everyone could do that. So you had to play with your team. You had to have it like it was a jigsaw puzzle that never stopped, and it created discussion. Why are we doing that? Why are they doing these skins? And it made the ISL from that point of view super exciting.
Definitely maximize your resources and use what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally agree.
Thank you, James. And this about concludes our match 9 analysis. That was amazing to chat to all of you, Saskia, Dylan, James. And before we conclude this completely, do you have any final words for the fans of your respective teams, to the devoted fans that stuck around for the 2 hours 40 minutes this podcast took? Any final words? Saskia, you want to start?
Thanks to listen, and I hope to see you in the next time. That you listen to the next time, and it's an honor to talk about the matches. They are done in November, and now it's January. So we talk a lot, and that's to create our memories also for a long time. So enjoy, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Saskia. Dylan, any final words from you, from the Toronto Titans fans?
Not much from me. I mean, it's great to kind of go down memory lane. I think this is sort of maybe the toughest, maybe it's just me, but maybe this is the toughest one to talk about because the last one of the regular season, and it brings me back to how tired people were feeling. It's easy kind of in retrospect to sort of watch the races, and there were still some very good races, but to kind of talk about how everyone was feeling at the time, and just kind of some of the challenges of the ISL format, that you have to be able to do a lot of high-end racing in that amount of time. And looking forward to next year. For all the Toronto fans out there, we're excited to have an even better team. Tune in next year when we beat Energy Standard. Sorry, James.
Child Energy Standard.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dylan. Any words from you, James?
Dylan, if my Canadian swimmers want to come home, Kyla Sanchez, Rebecca Smith, Penny, if they want to come back to the team they started all with, they're more than welcome. I think it's, I sit back and I look at, and I'm just talking almost 3 hours, just how privileged I was to live that experience, just with everything that's going on with the world now. And a lot of people are at home struggling. I'm definitely one of them also. I'm struggling with our program, in being stuck in Britain. I'm banned from traveling to France. I've been refused entry and traveling to places. So I know that there's a lot of people sat at home that are struggling in this period. And if we can, just from my point of view, is there is a future. Things are going to happen. We're all going to come out of this, and I'm very privileged to have lived what we did in November, and I'm looking forward to doing it all again this year, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, planning for let's keep this, I don't know how confidential this should be, but ISL should happen in 2021, and it should happen sooner than later. Let's put it this way.
It's a good one, Ivan. Sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Our next podcast. Match